After 4 months of grinding, our boy finally hits the first level of Qi condensation, officially promoting Manhua to an outer sect disciple of the prestigious Kaoshan sect, which means he gets to grab a free magical artifact before claiming his new room. Before he leaves, his senior drops some ominous advice about memorizing the manual to survive, prompting a polite bow from our hero before he eagerly sets off on his own, only to open the sacred scroll and find a hilariously blunt pitch about finding a backer. Naturally, he questions the profound wisdom of a manual that reads like a cheap sales brochure, but his doubts vanish the moment he spots the massive, towering treasure pavilion ahead, where a disembodied voice tosses him a starter pack of gear, including a mysterious pouch, leaving the clueless rookie completely baffled by the concept of basic magical inventory space. With the bag explained, the massive doors of the treasure pavilion finally creak open for him, and Manghao steps inside, bathed in a blinding light that promises legendary power, revealing rows of glowing relics, ancient statues, and mystical weapons stacked to the ceiling, leaving our boy completely starstruck as he prays to find something actually useful for once. Instead of a legendary sword, his eyes land on a dusty, rusted bronze mirror sitting nearby, which looks so incredibly basic and out of place that it instantly triggers his curiosity, prompting him to reach out and give the seemingly worthless trinket a gentle poke, only for a flashy, blonde senior to drop from the ceiling and praise his sharp eye, hyping up the rusty piece of junk as the most mysterious treasure in the entire pavilion, delivering a pitch so aggressively sketchy that even our clueless rookie can smell the scam. This flashy senior insists that truly legendary treasures always hide their brilliance behind a dusty, unassuming cover, launching into a wild backstory about otherworldly light falling from the heavens to forge this masterpiece, claiming it shook the entire state of Zhao before the sect's founder declared it a heaven-piercing relic. Naturally, Manghao realizes that if the legendary founder couldn't even use it, it's probably just useless junk. But the senior quickly counters, arguing that the founder's failure only proves the mirror is waiting for destiny, even offering a sketchy return policy just to ease our rookie's very reasonable suspicions. Knowing a scam when he smells one, Manghao hesitates, fully expecting a trap if he accepts, only for the senior to suddenly launch a swift kick that sends him flying through the air, dumping him unceremoniously onto the dirt outside while shouting that all sales are final. Clutching the useless bronze mirror, our boy can only stare in disbelief at his first official upgrade. Safely inside his new outer sect room, Manghao takes a moment to appreciate the massive upgrade. But his peaceful moment is instantly shattered when a desperate scream echoes right outside his window, followed by a sudden, terrifying splash of fresh blood painting the paper screen crimson. Peeking out, he watches in horror as one disciple casually loots another freshly slain corpse, forcing our terrified rookie to cover his mouth to keep from making a single sound. Suddenly, his senior's grim warnings about the brutal history of the Kaoshan sect flash in his mind, reminding him that this place actively encourages ruthless infighting and outright robbery over basic resources, with designated killing zones designed specifically to weed out the weak and foolish. Shattering his naive childhood dreams of noble, righteous immortals, the grim reality of this wolf den sinks in, though he quickly remembers he was literally kidnapped, so expecting a warm welcome was pretty dumb anyway. Back in his room, Manghao stares at the rusty bronze mirror sitting on his table, realizing that carrying a useless piece of junk might actually keep him from getting murdered. But survival in this brutal dog-eat-dog world still requires him to find a way to get stronger. Outside, the local bullies immediately write him off as a broke rookie with nothing worth stealing, laughing at his terrible taste since a rusty mirror is completely worthless to them. Thanks to his reputation as the local joke, Manghao enjoys a few peaceful, uninterrupted days, though his solo cultivation progress is moving at a painfully slow, agonizingly frustrating crawl, especially since any resources he manages to get will immediately make him a target for robbery. Suddenly, a crowd of frantic disciples rushes past him, shouting about the monthly pill distribution, leaving our boy completely intrigued by this sudden chance to finally boost his stagnant power. Joining the massive crowd, Manghao listens to the excited whispers about a rare high-tier pill distribution, but his focus shifts when he spots the very woman who kidnapped him standing on the stage. And to make matters worse, he overhears that these pills are sealed for 12 hours after release, meaning the entire event is just a sick, glorified deathmatch designed to weed out the weak. Suddenly, the elder commands silence and unleashes a swirling stream of glowing pills and spirit stones, sending the precious resources raining down upon the desperate crowd of outer sect disciples. Reaching out, everyone eagerly catches their share of the loot, desperate to secure their path to power, while Manghao carefully inspects his prize, knowing he must guard it with his very life, only for the elder to reveal a legendary drought spirit pill that radiates immense power, instantly triggering a wave of panic as the crowd realizes how many disciples will die fighting for it. Hoping to avoid the chaos, our boy freezes when the elder awards the legendary pill to him. This glowing golden orb of pure power floats forward, painting a massive target on his back. Realizing the last rookie who received this prize was brutally decapitated, sheer terror washes over him. At that exact moment, dozens of bloodthirsty disciples lock their glowing, murderous eyes directly onto him, and they immediately surround him with aggressive threats, demanding he hand over the treasure or die. Soon, a deafening chorus of greedy demands echoes as the entire crowd closes in on him. Meanwhile, high up on the mountain, the sect elders watch this disaster unfold in real time, admitting that giving such a legendary pill to a weak rookie is basically a death sentence. Unfortunately, they refuse to interfere because the brutal rules dictate that only the strong survive, leaving our poor main character completely on his own to survive the impending bloodbath. Raising his hand high, Manhua boldly interrupts the tense silence before anyone can make a move. He loudly proclaims his eternal gratitude to the very woman who dragged him into this nightmare, leaving senior sister Shu completely stunned by this sudden, public display of absolute devotion, before he bows deeply and offers her the legendary pill to repay her saving grace. Instantly, the bloodthirsty crowd realizes they have been completely outplayed by a brilliant high IQ move, while senior sister Shu seeks permission from the elder to accept this incredibly generous gift. Receiving the green light, she gracefully extends her hand to claim the floating golden treasure, which effortlessly glides away from Manhua and straight into her secure possession. To reward his loyalty, she grants him exclusive access to her highly coveted high-energy cultivation cave. Grinning from ear to ear, our boy celebrates his genius play while the crowd burns with envy. Up on the cliff, the amused elders laugh at Menghao's shameless but highly practical survival instincts, which leads our clever rookie straight to the entrance of senior sister Shu's private cultivation cave, clutching the glowing green jade slip that serves as his golden ticket to get inside. As he holds the relic, the ancient key flares with a brilliant mystical green light, prompting the heavy stone doors to slowly slide open and release a wave of dense energy. Stepping inside, Manhua is instantly blown away by a luxurious chamber overflowing with rich spiritual mist, realizing this premium training ground is worth way more than the golden pill he just traded away. By the next morning, the sun rises over the quiet peaks to find him deep in meditation, and he suddenly opens his eyes in shock, having squeezed 2 months of progress into one night, only to realize he cultivated so hard that he completely drained the room's entire spiritual supply. Standing up, Manhua decides it's finally time to check on his old chubby friend, as his secure new cave dwelling finally gives him the peace of mind to walk outside, but a sudden rustling in the nearby bushes immediately catches his attention, prompting him to pull out his mirror, hoping to catch some wild game for a feast, and he leaps down the mountain cliffs with his newly acquired cultivation speed. Thinking back to his chubby buddy Li Fugui, the pampered heir of a wealthy merchant, who was kidnapped alongside him by senior sister Shu and dragged to this brutal sect, forcing them to share a cramped room and perform backbreaking chores instead of living in luxury. Despite his wealthy background, Fugui selflessly chopped wood so Manhua could focus on his cultivation, though this loyal friend also had a terrifying habit of sleepwalking and literally eating stone beds. Manhua recalls his buddy's bizarre sleepwalking habit of literally chewing through solid wooden furniture, deciding to hunt down some wild game to treat his loyal wood-chopping friend to a decent meal. And it doesn't take long before he successfully snatches a plump, highly energetic wild chicken. Suddenly, a strange, intense heat flares up from the bronze mirror tucked inside his robes, causing the poor bird's backside to violently explode in a horrific shower of blood and feathers. Staring in absolute horror, our boy wonders if he somehow caused this bizarre, spontaneous poultry combustion, prompting him to pull out the rusty bronze mirror that is currently burning against his chest. Realizing this supposedly useless piece of junk might actually possess some highly volatile hidden power. Determined to test his theory, he leaps back into action to find another test subject, quickly spotting a clueless wild rabbit as he prepares to unleash the mirror's chaotic magic once more. Aiming the mirror at the clueless rabbit, its backside instantly explodes in a shower of blood, and he immediately leaps through the forest to test this bizarre weapon on every furry creature around, with his eyes shining in absolute delight as more blood splatters across the peaceful woods. Leaving a trail of freshly exploded animal carcasses behind, he realizes he has stumbled upon a masterpiece. However, our boy can't help but notice that this legendary mirror has some incredibly specific questionable preferences, specifically a burning desire to blow up the rear ends of furry beasts like tigers and wolves. Strangely, it has absolutely no reaction to scaly creatures, proving this magical relic is a massive furry enthusiast. But his scientific research is cut short when a massive, angry crimson flame demon ape charges forward. Reacting instantly, Manhua unleashes a blinding beam of light from the mirror at the leaping beast, leaving the giant ape dead on the ground with its butt completely obliterated by his peerless treasure. Looking at his mirror, Manhua notices the rust is fading after its bizarre butt-exploding rampage, but he can't complain since the dead ape left behind a valuable second-layer demon core. Placing his loot on the table, he gathers his tiny stash of magical resources. Our boy realizes this pathetic pile of pills and rocks represents his entire worldly net worth, leaving him to debate whether to swallow the green demon core or the black pill first. He ultimately decides to test the sect-issued pill first, popping the dark orb into his mouth, feeling a gentle wave of warm spiritual energy dissolve and circulate smoothly through his veins. Eager for a greater boost, Manhua immediately tosses the raw green demon core in next, only to freeze in sheer shock as a violent, overwhelming surge of power suddenly erupts, sending him scrambling onto his bed to desperately cultivate and tame the wild, explosive energy. Sitting cross-legged on his bed, Manhua desperately circulates his energy as dark smoke rises around him. Realizing he was incredibly reckless to swallow a raw demon core without any any preparation. But the rising black mist is actually mortal filth being expelled from his body, signaling that he has successfully broken through to the second layer of chi condensation. Catching his breath, our boy marvels at the sheer explosive potency of the beast core, though he laments that hunting rare monsters is way too dangerous to do consistently. Suddenly, his jaw drops when he looks down at the table and spots his mirror, stumbling backward in absolute disbelief as he notices a second glowing green core has appeared, while his precious spirit stone has completely vanished, eaten by the mysterious rusty relic, leaving him with a mind-blowing realization that his useless junk is actually a legendary duplication tool. Shaking his head, Manhua realizes he desperately needs more spirit stones to test this duplication theory. Unfortunately, the next pill distribution is a month away, leaving him completely broke in this immortal world. Recalling an ancient proverb about getting rich through risky windfalls, he decides to make a desperate move. Without hesitation, he pops the duplicated green demon core straight into his mouth to absorb its power. A massive surge of raw energy instantly floods his meridians, lighting up his body like a Christmas tree. Flipping through his manual, he learns that reaching the second level finally unlocks actual immortal arts. Eager to test his new strength, he channels his spiritual energy to summon a blazing fire serpent. He unleashes the fiery spell directly onto a massive wild bear, triggering a spectacular explosion in the woods. To his horror, the angry beast shrugs off the blast, proving his new spell isn't strong enough. Realizing he needs a backup plan, he whips out his trusty bronze mirror to unleash its blinding light. Pointing his trusty mirror, Manhua triggers another spectacular butt explosion to take down the massive bear. Clutching the fresh beast core, he plans to duplicate it and breeze straight to the third level. But as ominous growls echo through the dark woods, our boy decides it's finally time to head back. 10 days later, he joins a massive orderly crowd for the highly anticipated monthly pill distribution. Pocketing his meager half-stone reward, Manhua realizes these basic sect pills are practically useless to him now. Unfortunately, the peace doesn't last as desperate disciples immediately start robbing each other right in the open. Knowing his fake connection to senior sister Shu won't protect him forever, he slips away to train harder. A smug grin creeps onto his face as he imagines turning the tables on these greedy bullies soon. Back in the forest, he notes the mirror completely ignored his human targets, only targeting furry beasts. Suddenly, he freezes when he spots a creepy, dark silhouette lurking suspiciously behind a nearby tree. Manhua instantly recognizes the stalker as Zhao Wugong, a ruthless third-level disciple known for murdering rookies. Looming over our boy, the arrogant bully demands he hand over all his pills and spirit stones. Playing weak, Manhua bows deeply and begs for leniency, which only feeds the thug's massive ego. This thug decides to seize the luxurious cave for himself, planning to enslave and eventually murder our boy. Nervously deflecting, Manhua points out that the cave actually belongs to the formidable senior sister Shu. Enraged by this blatant shield, the bully lunges forward with a murderous roar to teach him a lesson. But our boy isn't a helpless rookie anymore, immediately channeling his newly mastered fire serpent art. A massive snake of pure fire erupts forward, triggering a spectacular explosion right in the bully's face. This violent blast blows the arrogant thug backward, forcing him to desperately block with his sword, leaving Zhao Wugong completely paralyzed with shock as he realizes the rookie has already reached the second level. Zhao Wugong sneers and decides to activate his secret trump card, the beastification art, transforming his human body into a monstrous blue-flamed hybrid overflowing with primal power, forcing Manhua to quickly turn on his heels and sprint through the woods. While the arrogant bully leaps after him, screaming threats into the empty mountain air. A massive, hairy claw suddenly swipes through the trees right behind our fleeing hero, barely missing his head as the beastified thug unleashes a lethal, razor-sharp slash, sending the kid sliding across the dirt to narrowly escape a gruesome fate. Looking up, Manhua notices his opponent is now covered in thick, luscious body fur, which instantly prompts him to reach into his bag for his favorite butt-exploding treasure, aiming the bronze mirror directly at the charging werewolf to deliver a legendary spanking. This bronze mirror unleashes a blinding red flash directly at the beastified bully's most vulnerable spot, sending the massive werewolf crashing to the dirt as the agonizing impact registers instantly, leaving Zhao Wugong clutching his rear in absolute agony while Manhua celebrates his weapon's success. Holding up the mirror, our boy generously offers to call it a draw and walk away, but the humiliated bully responds with insane threats to slaughter Manhua's entire family in revenge. Hearing this, the kid's polite demeanor completely vanishes as he realizes peace was never an option, prompting him to cold-bloodedly aim the mirror once more to finish what the thug started, and the werewolf begins to shake violently as the magical relic locks onto its target again, causing blood to spray from his furry hide as the devastating internal pressure builds up, unleashing a horrific scream of pure torment from the bully as his backside completely gives out. With a final devastating blast from the mirror, the beastified bully's backside violently erupts in blood, and the legendary bronze mirror clatters onto the grass as the chaotic battle finally ends, leaving Manhua standing frozen in absolute silence as he processes what just happened. Staring down at the lifeless furry corpse, our boy realizes he has officially taken a human life, though he quickly reminds himself that the arrogant thug left him with absolutely no other choice. Retreating to the safety of his cave, he sits cross-legged to calm his racing thoughts, deciding that survival of the fittest is the law here as he grabs the bully's storage pouch, and his eyes instantly widen in pure shock as he peers inside the glowing bag. Turns out the dead thug was absolutely loaded, leaving a massive pile of spirit stones and pills, along with a high-quality sword and a mysterious bone fragment covered in ancient glowing writing. Manghao realizes the bone fragment contains a beastification technique, but he is too terrified to try it. Since he just scored a massive pile of spirit stones, he decides to test his duplication theory, placing the legendary bronze mirror flat on the table to begin his scientific experiment. Our boy carefully drops the green demon core directly onto the mirror's reflective surface, followed by his newly acquired spirit stone to see if the magic actually works. Unfortunately, after waiting for half an hour, absolutely nothing happens to his precious items, prompting him to swap out the stone and try a different combination to trigger the relic. And the moment he drops the new crystal, the mirror's surface suddenly ripples like water. A blinding pillar of emerald light suddenly erupts from the glass with a deafening roar, leaving our boy completely speechless as the legendary treasure finally unleashes its true power. This duplication process actually works, leaving two smoking green beast cores resting on the mirror's surface, and before long, he duplicates a whole pile of them at the cost of his spirit stones, leaving him with just one stone left, but a massive stash of premium cultivation fuel, which he immediately begins to consume to absorb the raw power of the giant ape. Popping another glowing green core into his mouth, he prepares for the inevitable violent rush of energy, as the wild spirits of the slain beasts claw at his mind in a chaotic struggle, forcing him to sit cross-legged as a terrifying tree of glowing eyes rises above him. By the next morning, our boy opens his eyes and prepares to test his new strength, summoning a massive roaring fire serpent that signals his breakthrough to the peak of the third layer, leaving him with a smug grin as he realizes he is now the strongest rookie around. Since basic sect pills are useless, our boy decides to gift them to his buddy Li Fugui, trekking deep into the rugged, misty mountains where the low-level disciples are forced to do hard labor, only to find the chubby disciple aggressively swinging an axe while screaming about stolen steamed buns and wives. Watching from the bushes, Manghua sweats in pure confusion as his friend sleepwalks through a violent rampage, before the exhausted fatty suddenly drops his weapon and face plants directly into the soft grass, leaving our hero to stand over the snoring boy completely baffled by this bizarre daytime nap. Leaning closer, he notices the sleeping fatty's teeth are growing incredibly sharp, signaling the birth of spirit fangs. Suddenly, the chubby disciple bolts upright with a drooling grin, instantly sniffing the delicious aroma of wild chicken. Turns out Manghua has already set up a campfire, roasting a juicy bird for his hungry friend, who happily devours the meat while crying about how his dream self did all the hard work. Hearing that his chubby buddy has only grown sharp fangs instead of gathering actual spiritual energy, Manghua generously hands over a premium spirit pill before bidding farewell to his grateful friend, and begins his long journey back up the steep, winding stone steps of the mountain. Suddenly, a thick, mysterious fog rolls in, completely blanketing the rocky path beneath his boots, prompting our boy to pause as he overhears a group of disciples gossiping nearby, who are busy hyping up a powerful 6th-level genius named Senior Brother Wong. This handsome prodigy quickly plays humble, claiming he deeply respects the sect's top elite disciples, though his subtle smug smirk suggests he fully expects to surpass them all very soon. Keeping his head down, Manghua politely clasps his hands to greet the powerful group, while secretly analyzing his potential rivals with a pair of incredibly sharp calculating eyes. Manghua watches in awe as the genius's feet float effortlessly above the stone steps, realizing the legendary prodigy is using a high-level wind walking technique to glide around, which makes our boy realize he desperately needs more spirit stones to reach that level. Deciding to explore further, he travels deep into the rugged, misty mountain peaks, until he stops right in front of a massive stone warning sign for the lower public zone. Suddenly, a desperate cry for help echoes through the trees, forcing him to turn around, only to witness a ruthless bully violently robbing a helpless disciple right in the open, prompting our boy to instinctively dive into the bushes, though he realizes he is actually stronger now. Staring at the chaotic scene, he weighs the extreme dangers of this lawless zone against his needs, before a brilliant, slightly devious idea suddenly sparks in his mind to solve his money problems. Manghua heads straight to the local pill-nurturing workshop to stock up on supplies, asking the shopkeeper if he can trade his basic spirit pills instead of actual stones. And with a successful deal secured, our boy struts out ready to launch his master plan. This very next day, he arrives at the entrance of the lawless lower public zone, setting up a makeshift shop with banners to start his highly questionable medical business. Right on cue, a brutal sword fight erupts nearby between two low-level disciples, leaving one poor kid clutching a nasty, bleeding shoulder wound after a vicious slash, while the arrogant attacker laughs maniacally, preparing to deliver a final lethal blow. Suddenly, Manghua yells out to the bleeding victim to grab his attention, aggressively pitching his premium healing pills right in the middle of their life-or-death duel. Manghua cheerfully offers a single hemostatic pill for the low price of one spirit stone, which immediately outrages the bleeding victim, who accuses our boy of blatant highway robbery. But the clever salesman points out that winning this fight will easily win back his investment, prompting the desperate fighter to toss over his last stone, which Manghua catches effortlessly. This wounded disciple quickly swallows the glowing pill as a bright light erupts from his shoulder, instantly sealing the deep gash and knitting his torn flesh back together in seconds. Handing over the medicine with a bright smile, our boy politely thanks him for the business, while the furious attacker watches his easy target get completely rejuvenated right before his eyes, leaving the fully healed victim to stand tall and ready for a brutal round two, and he immediately lunges forward with a powerful slash to turn the tables on his opponent. This angry attacker refuses to fall for the same trick twice as his wounded opponent struggles to stand. Manhua swoops in to pitch a double pack of premium pills for 2 spirit stones. While the furious attacker screams about this blatant interference, our boy casually defends his capitalist hustle, leaving the two rivals to resume their bloody duel while he cheerfully waves goodbye and walks away. Our clever merchant wanders deeper, aggressively pitching his wares to every fighting disciple he meets, playing both sides of every conflict to ensure a steady flow of desperate customers and easy profit. After completely selling out his stock, he immediately plots to corner the market and establish a total monopoly. Suddenly, a greedy thug lunges from the shadows with a lethal strike, aiming to rob our wealthy protagonist, but the attacker's smug face instantly contorts in pure terror as his sword shatters against absolute defense, and the foolish bully faceplants while Manhua proudly hoists his banner over his defeated foe. Manhua loots the unconscious thug, politely offering to keep his storage pouch safe during his forced nap. Counting his massive profits, our boy realizes he just made a whopping 53 spirit stones from his hustle. This legal business is way faster and safer than robbing people, especially when he finds a rare pink pill. Turns out it is an incredibly expensive beauty pill, perfect for preserving someone's youthful looks forever. Suddenly, a dark silhouette appears at the entrance of his cave, interrupting his peaceful celebration. Whirling around in surprise, the kid prepares himself for another potential fight with an intruder. Instead of a hostile thug, a stunning white-haired female cultivator quietly steps into the dim light. Instantly recognizing her, Manhua bows deeply to politely greet the powerful senior sister Shu. This beautiful senior glances around the cave, scanning his humble living space with a cold, analytical gaze. Satisfied with whatever she is looking for, she gives a subtle nod to begin their unexpected conversation. Manhua politely invites senior sister Shu to stay for a while, hoping to build a better connection, but she coldly declines, explaining she enters seclusion tomorrow and only stopped by to check on him, leaving our boy alone in his cave to stare at an open book on his stone table, which hilariously states that every cultivator absolutely needs a powerful backer to survive in this brutal world. Realizing she is his perfect target, he sprints down the mountain path to put his plan into motion. Presenting her with the rare pink beauty pill he supposedly sacrificed his own cultivation resources to obtain, while the stunning senior sister stares back at him with a completely unreadable, icy expression. Slowly, she reaches out to accept the gift, though she is not entirely fooled by his charm, lecturing him about wasting resources on vanity when his focus should be on surviving this ruthless world. Bowing with perfect innocence, our clever protagonist plays the humble junior who just wanted to show his gratitude. Senior sister Shu accepts the gift, handing him a green jade pendant that serves as a defensive treasure. Manhua immediately asks to walk her out, hoping to flaunt this high-level connection to the entire sect. She stares back in silence, clearly seeing right through his shameless little scheme. Surprisingly, she agrees anyway, letting our pleased protagonist tag along as they head down the path. Their silhouettes glide past the towering, sun-drenched cliffs as they make their way down the mountain. Meanwhile, an old master watches from afar, laughing heartily at the kid's sheer audacity and cleverness, praising Manhua for perfectly mastering the art of securing and maintaining a powerful backer. Word of our boy's exploit spreads like wildfire, with disciples gossiping about his new business and recent victories, completely shocked that a fresh rookie could easily overpower a seasoned fighter like Cao Yang. Turns out, the real kicker is the rumor of him walking side by side with the legendary senior sister Shu. Disciples gossip about senior sister Shu's legendary icy attitude, agreeing that nobody has ever seen her smile, which makes Menghao's sudden rise to fame look absolutely legendary to the rest of the sect, leaving his peers drowning in a sea of pure, unadulterated jealousy over his top-tier connection. Meanwhile, a bruised and battered Cao Yang desperately begs for an audience with a powerful senior brother, whining about how Menghao robbed him and is now running a highly profitable, illegal medicine business, begging the elite cultivator to step in and deliver some much-needed justice to the shameless rookie. This powerful senior brother coldly dismisses him, prompting the snitch to happily thank his influential cousin, only to get immediately scolded for trying to use family ties inside the strict sect rules. Left alone, the powerful Lu Hong strokes his chin, realizing this pill-selling scheme is actually pure genius, and decides to steal the business model for himself to make some easy, massive profit. A brand new banner for a rival pill nurturing shop suddenly appears in the zone, leaving Meng Hao to stare in absolute disbelief at this shameless copycat business, only to realize the powerful Lu Hong has personally set up shop on his turf, prompting our boy to wisely retreat instead of picking a fight with a stronger cultivator. Meanwhile, another brutal grudge match erupts between two hot-headed disciples in the forest, resulting in a vicious slash that leaves one fighter bleeding out on the grass, and just as the wounded kid clutches his chest in pure agony, both both rival merchants instantly swoop in to pitch their life-saving pills for one spirit stone, turning the chaotic battlefield into a hilarious, high-stakes bidding war between two greedy salesmen. But Manhua easily wins the crowd by offering a cheeky 20% discount. Manhua sighs over his morning sales, realizing his profits have plummeted thanks to his new competitor, while Lu Hong happily counts his massive pile of freshly earned spirit stones. This greedy senior brother realizes this business is a goldmine, plotting to permanently eliminate his rival soon. By the next day, Lu Hong is literally forcing his disciples to buy his pills at sword point, prompting our boy to take a break and brainstorm a much more clever counter-strategy. But his peace is shattered when the arrogant bully corners him with a deadly threat, warning Meng Hao that he will personally destroy his cultivation if he dares to sell again. Undeterred, our clever protagonist sits in peaceful meditation right at the entrance of the public zone, drawing a crowd of gossiping onlookers who expect him to get absolutely pulverized by his rival, until a dark silhouette finally emerges from the forest, signaling the arrival of the bully. Meng Hao lunges forward with blinding speed, completely catching his arrogant rival off guard. This surrounding crowd gasps in sheer disbelief, realizing the crazy rookie actually wants to fight. Unsheathing his blade with a smug sneer, the arrogant bully prepares to end this annoying pest. Onlookers instantly recognize the legendary Ziyang sword, a highly prized weapon awarded only to elite disciples. With absolute confidence in his superior weapon, the greedy senior charges ahead to deliver a lethal strike. Reacting instantly, our boy unleashes a massive blinding arc of energy that completely dominates the battlefield. A devastating impact instantly shatters the legendary Ziyang sword into a million useless pieces, sending the arrogant bully flying backward as he violently coughs up a mouthful of fresh blood. Clutching his face in absolute horror, the defeated senior realizes Meng Hao has reached the 4th layer, which our boy calmly confirms with a smirk, revealing he reached this level just last night. Meng Hao fumes in his cave, realizing his rival's shameless greed has pushed him way too far. Deciding that playing nice is for the weak, he dumps out his entire stash of hard-earned spirit stones. Stacking his remaining low-grade condensing pills, our boy prepares to brute force his way to a breakthrough. He shoves a massive handful of pills down his throat, unleashing a wild torrent of raw spiritual energy. Meditating amidst the chaotic waves of his own power, the kid vows to crush his greedy oppressors. Returning to the present, a smug Meng Hao asks his bleeding rival if he still wants to fight. Onlookers lose their absolute minds, realizing this insane rookie has somehow reached the 4th layer of cultivation. Despite the overwhelming gap in their power, the stubborn bully refuses to admit defeat just yet. Suddenly, the desperate senior brother launches a sneaky, underhanded surprise attack to catch our boy off guard. But Meng Hao reacts with lightning speed, effortlessly parrying the lethal strike with a brilliant flash of steel. This clash of steel ends with a deafening crack as a blade shatters into pieces, while the bleeding bully staggers back, desperately claiming his legendary weapon is still superior. Unfazed by the empty threats, Meng Hao calmly reaches down to tap his trusty storage pouch, summoning a massive circle of glowing flying swords to hover menacingly around his body. He reveals his cheat code mirror can copy weapons, promising to bury his rival in cheap steel. And with a simple hand gesture, he launches the deadly barrage straight at his opponent. A devastating impact instantly obliterates the bully's prized weapon in a shower of sparks. Shocked onlookers gossip in disbelief as the bleeding senior brother stares at his shattered sword, leaving our smug protagonist to summon even more blades while mockingly asking for another round. Enraged and desperate, the beaten rival clutches a mysterious green pendant to unleash his final trump card. Seeing the terrifying energy buildup, the surrounding crowd scrambles to escape the crossfire, as the desperate bully unleashes a massive glowing green gourd to crush our boy, screaming that this high-tier treasure from an elite senior will absolutely end Meng Hao's life. A blinding pillar of destructive energy erupts from the artifact, obliterating everything in its path, leaving the fleeing disciples to marvel at the sheer, terrifying power of this elite weapon. But Meng Hao stands completely unscathed, protected by a brilliant green shield of defensive energy, though the impact leaves a noticeable crack on his precious defensive jade pendant, making him realize he would be toast right now without Senior Sister Shu's timely gift. Meanwhile, his rival stares in absolute horror, unable to comprehend how his ultimate attack failed, while his own legendary magical treasure begins to crack and crumble under the pressure. Snatching the green gourd right out of the air, Meng Hao happily loots his defeated rival, who can only stare in wonder at the mysterious high-tier magical treasure dangling before him, while the bruised bully desperately warns him that stealing it will invite an elite senior's wrath. Our boy calmly reminds him of the sect's brutal rules, where finders are keepers, before promising to return the favor by completely shattering the bully's cultivation once and for all, leaving the terrified senior brother to beg for mercy as his entire world crumbles. Later that night, the quiet mountain cave stands in stark contrast to the day's chaos, where a pensive Meng Hao sits alone, weighing the heavy consequences of his recent victory. Realizing this deadly rivalry was completely inevitable unless he chose to play the victim, but since he is completely broke, copying this legendary gourd is unfortunately out of the question. Manghao sighs in his cave, realizing senior sister Shu is already in deep seclusion, leaving him to wonder if he should return the favor to senior brother Wang instead. But his peaceful brainstorming is cut short when an aggressive messenger arrives at his cave door. Annoyed by the late-night disturbance, our boy refuses to open up and demands they speak outside, prompting the smug messenger to sneer at his sheer audacity before delivering a harsh decree, demanding Manghao cripple his own cultivation, hand over his treasures, and sever his limbs, which would effectively end his journey as a disciple and leave him completely defenseless. Shocked by this brutal punishment, the kid asks if one senior can truly override sect rules, only to be told that this elite senior's word is the absolute law in this place. With a final warning to kowtow tomorrow, the arrogant messenger turns around and walks away. This crescent moon hangs high over the quiet forest as the dreaded deadline quickly approaches. Inside his cave, Manghao panics over his options while sweating bullets in the dark, prompting him to pack his bags and seriously consider making a run for it. But as he approaches the heavy stone door, he hesitates to abandon everything he built, realizing that fleeing like a coward will only prove his enemies right in the end. When morning finally comes, our boy steps out of his cave to face his grim fate. Waiting by a nearby tree is the arrogant messenger, Shangguan Song, who sneers at his arrival, mockingly praising the kid for not fleeing and avoiding the permanent label of a sect traitor, before suggesting he beg for mercy so his powerful rival might at least spare one arm, leaving our protagonist to simmer in silent absolute rage as he prepares for the worst. Manghao climbs the massive stone steps of the inner sect, surrounded by oblivious disciples, who are busy sucking up to their respective new brothers for some basic cultivation guidance, while others dutifully return borrowed spirit pills to maintain their fragile alliances. But the peaceful atmosphere instantly evaporates as a crowd parts for a truly terrifying presence, revealing the powerful elite senior Han Zong, whose golden eyes radiate pure arrogance. With a smug, punchable grin, this high-tier cultivator casually demands Manghao hand over the stolen gourd, leaving our boy standing silently before him while the messenger snickers in the background. Refusing to beg for mercy, the kid coldly reminds everyone of the sect's laws, declaring that whatever is seized on the battlefield rightfully belongs to the victor, prompting the elite senior to laughably claim his personal ownership overrides the entire sect's rules. With a casual flick of his wrist, Han Zong points a single finger at our boy, unleashing a devastating beam of spiritual energy that slams directly into Menghao's defensive shield, forcing the kid to brace himself as the overwhelming pressure threatens to crush him, while the arrogant elite senior watches with absolute boredom, completely unimpressed by his resistance. Suddenly, Han Zong taps the air again, instantly shattering the green barrier into a million pieces, sending a massive shockwave through the courtyard that leaves our protagonist completely wide open, leaving Manghao to stare in absolute horror at the crumbling remnants of his defense, realizing with a sinking heart that senior sister Shu's precious jade pendant is officially gone. Before he can even recover, the smug senior brother casually summons a violent vortex of wind, trapping our helpless hero in a brutal hurricane that violently shreds his body and cultivation. This stolen green gourd flies through the air, returning directly to its rightful owner's hand. Han Zong catches his prized treasure, casually asking if his brutal message was properly delivered. Suddenly, violent vortexes of wind wrap around Menghao's legs to snap his bones, leaving our boy completely paralyzed as the crushing spiritual pressure locks him in place. With a cold glare, the arrogant elite senior demands his complete expulsion from the sect, unleashing a devastating blast that sends the kid crashing hard into the stone floor. Just as things look hopeless, a powerful white-haired elder steps in to stop the madness, prompting Han Zong to back down with a fake show of respect for his senior, before he casually strolls away, leaving our battered protagonist bleeding out in the courtyard. Staring at the sky, a heavily bruised Manghao silently vows to make them all pay. This surrounding disciples watch in silence, some pitying him while others smirk at his downfall. Even the powerful elder remains quiet, refusing to offer any real comfort to our battered hero, leaving Manghao to drag his broken body off the cold stone floor entirely on his own, clutching his bleeding chest as he limps past the whispering crowd of judgmental onlookers, slowly making his painful descent down the massive mountain steps back to his lonely cave. Reaching his sanctuary at last, the exhausted kid pushes open the heavy stone door, only to immediately lose his footing and tumble helplessly onto the hard tile floor, passing out instantly from the sheer physical trauma and depleted spiritual energy. Days bleed into more days as his unconscious body slowly heals in the dark, until the 10th day finally arrives, bringing a mysterious visitor to his cave entrance. Senior Sister Shu steps into the dark cave, finding our battered protagonist unconscious on the cold stone floor. Looking down with deep concern, she reveals she only just emerged from her deep seclusion yesterday. Channeling her spiritual energy, she warns him that his powerful rival, Wang Tengfei, possesses an incredibly mysterious background. Levitating his broken body, she explains that this elite genius is already at the 6th layer of cultivation, gently tucking our battered hero into bed with a soothing stream of warm, healing energy. Leaving a protective green talisman on the table, she promises to rescue him if his enemies ever return. Manghao weakly offers his thanks before asking how long it normally takes to reach the 7th layer. Turning to leave, she warns him that breaking through those massive bottlenecks usually takes an entire lifetime. Now alone in the dark, our stubborn protagonist silently plots his next move toward absolute power. Suddenly, an elder's voice echoes from outside, ordering him to recruit his old labor buddy once he heals. Deep inside the quiet cave, the echoes of the elder's commands slowly fade away, leaving our battered protagonist to finally open his eyes and process his grim reality before he slowly forces his aching legs to stand up and take a step forward. Finding a dusty manual left on his stone table that details the sect's ancient history, this text boldly promises that the legendary old ancestor will always have his back, prompting a cynical Manhua to bite his own Dolefker in sheer bitter defiance. Using his fresh blood as ink, he aggressively scribbles over the useless propaganda, declaring that he only relies on himself to survive this brutal cultivation world. Outside, the crisp morning air sweeps across the massive, towering peaks of the mountain, as our determined hero marches down the stone steps to find his old friend. Reaching the lower sector, our boy finds his old buddy Fatty waving goodbye to a cheering crowd, but turns out they are actually celebrating his departure and begging him to never return. This bizarre send-off leaves Manhua completely baffled as he tries to make sense of it, only to learn Fatty's former roommates fled because they kept having terrifying nightmares in his presence. Running across a bridge, the chubby cultivator excitedly calls out to show off his latest treasure, which turns out to be a seemingly ordinary short sword that leaves Manhua completely unimpressed. Turns out, Fatty only wants the legendary blade to grind down his rapidly growing, razor-sharp teeth, making our boy realize his friend's true talent is literally chewing through solid wood while sleeping. Declining an invitation to live together, Fatty insists on privacy, which actually suits our hero's secret plans. Sitting near a stone monument, Manhua quietly cultivates as his noisy friend rushes down the steps. Manhua hands over his side business to Fatty, warning him to stay safe and avoid unnecessary risks, while our boy settles down on a quiet stone to focus entirely on his own cultivation, letting the seasons change around him as he patiently builds up his inner spiritual energy, until Fatty suddenly bursts back into his life, dragging a very familiar face along with him. Turns out it is Xiao Hu, the timid kid who was captured alongside them so long ago, prompting Manhua to immediately ask about the fate of their other lost companion, Wang Yucai, only to receive the devastating news that their old friend did not survive the brutal transition, as Xiaohu explains how the poor guy was blown off a cliff and eaten by wild beasts. Heartbroken by the tragic tale, Fatty bursts into tears and offers the kid their absolute protection, but the traumatized boy politely declines their offer, leaving them deeply confused as he walks away. This traumatized kid walks away into the snowy forest, leaving behind a trail of lonely footprints, prompting Fatty to scratch his head in confusion while Manhua watches him go in absolute silence, realizing that everyone has their own secrets and hidden fortunes in this brutal cultivation world. 3 months later, a massive crowd gathers for the highly anticipated pill distribution day at the sect. Our boy asks Fatty if the recently deceased Grand Elder was their old savior, Elder Ouyang, only to learn it was someone else, right before admitting his own cultivation has hit a bottleneck, wondering if his reckless habit of swallowing raw demon cores is finally catching up to him. Suddenly, the gossiping crowd erupts in excitement as a rare high-grade pill distribution begins on the stage, revealing a powerful white-haired elder holding a blazing golden pill that radiates pure spiritual energy, leaving Manhua completely breathless as he instantly recognizes the legendary drought spirit pill. This crowd erupts in whispers, noting that this legendary pill is only handed out once a year, prompting Manhua to lock his eyes on the prize, knowing it could trigger his breakthrough. But the stern elder quickly silences the rowdy crowd to begin his annual speech. Standing calmly among the disciples is the elite genius Wang Tengfei, looking completely unbothered, as the elder explains his preference for rewarding fresh blood to ensure the sect's future glory, while our protagonist listens intently, hoping his name might actually get called today. Meanwhile, Fatty is busy chewing on his sword like a maniac, completely ignoring the high-stakes ceremony, until the elder suddenly points into the crowd, launching the glowing pill toward a target. This blazing treasure lands right in Fatty's hands, leaving him and Manhua completely flabbergasted, leaving the chubby cultivator sweating bullets as he realizes he just inherited a massive death sentence. Fatty panics and begs Manhua for help, knowing this legendary pill is basically a death sentence. Suddenly, a greedy cultivator slaps his rival aside to clear a path toward the prize, while a massive, angry brute pushes through the chaotic crowd with pure murder in his eyes. Realizing the danger, Fatty quickly drops the glowing pill right into our boy's open palm. Manhua grabs his terrified friend, telling him to take cover while he handles the heat. But the surrounding crowd immediately recognizes him, laughing at his weak fourth-layer cultivation. With no time to waste, our boy bolts down the steps with a greedy mob hot on his heels, while Fatty plays along by crying dramatically, falsely accusing Manhua of stealing his precious treasure. This furious cultivators chase him down the mountain, demanding he hand over the pill before they crush him, leaving Fatty to watch from afar, silently praying his brave friend survives this absolute madness. Manhua calculates that if he can survive 12 hours, the legendary pill is officially his, relying on his superior speed and deep knowledge of the the local terrain to outrun his pursuers, but with 5th-level cultivators hot on his tail, he decides to dive straight into the deadly Black Mountain. While others fear the mountain's terrifying demonic beasts, our boy knows his trusty mirror can easily handle them, leaving his greedy pursuers completely dumbfounded as they watch him march straight into certain death, forcing them to pick up the pace before a wild beast accidentally eats their precious prize. Entering the dark, twisted forest, the mob suddenly stops dead in their tracks as they spot something, finding a massive, bloodied tiger beast lying completely lifeless on the cold forest floor. Realizing the beast was a powerful 3rd-level threat, they notice its valuable demon core has already been snatched, only to discover 3 more slaughtered beasts nearby, making them wonder how a weakling pulled this off. One of the pursuers breaks into a cold sweat, realizing he severely underestimated our boy's true power, while his beefy rival warns him that this creepy mountain is no place to linger around, prompting the greedy cultivator to secretly plot to snatch the legendary pill before anyone else can, as the 2 powerful rivals suddenly burst forward, desperate to catch their slippery target. Meanwhile, Manhua pulls out his trusty copper mirror, ready to exploit its bizarre powers once again, instantly sending a pack of wild demonic beasts running for their lives in sheer terror, allowing our clever protagonist to easily lose his pursuers without wasting a single drop of energy. Suddenly, 2 massive flying swords crash directly in front of him, forcing a wild mid-air dodge, sending our boy spinning through the air as he barely avoids getting sliced to pieces, only for another deadly blade to block his path, trapping him in a high-stakes ambush. Manhua hops onto his flying sword, pulling off a high-speed glide to outrun his shocked pursuers. This greedy duo nearly loses their minds, thinking a 4th-level weakling has somehow mastered true flight, but turns out our boy is just throwing his sword and jumping on it mid-air, leaving his enemies to laugh at his massive waste of precious spiritual energy. Little do they know, Manhua has plenty of pills to keep his mana tank full, fueling his burning desire to grow stronger and finally crush his arrogant rival, Wang Tengfei. Suddenly, the beefy cultivator drops from the canopy, unleashing a massive fire snake right at him, while his partner launches a deadly flying sword, offering fake mercy if he surrenders the pill, sending a barrage of lethal magic and steel chasing our protagonist down the mountain path, only for Manhua to summon 10 flying swords at once, leaving his pursuers absolutely jaw-dropped. With a cold smirk, Manhua shouts the command to trigger his ultimate trap, sending a massive fiery explosion ripping through the forest and blasting his pursuers backward, leaving the greedy duo absolutely stunned by how a supposedly broke weakling has this much firepower. 30 minutes later, another massive blast echoes through the trees as our boy keeps running, and an hour into the chase, the glowing pill continues to act like a giant beacon. Yet even after 90 minutes of non-stop explosions, Manhua shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. His exhausted pursuers can barely keep up, completely baffled by his seemingly infinite supply of weapons. Realizing he is constantly popping high-grade recovery pills to keep his spiritual energy completely topped off. But their complaints are cut short when a ferocious wolf beast leaps out to attack them, forcing the beefy cultivator to punch the monster while wondering why the local wildlife ignores our hero. While his exhausted pursuers fight off the local wildlife, they realize they can't lose his trail, because the stolen pill's hourly glow acts like a giant beacon in the dark forest, prompting our boy to tread carefully as a massive beast tide begins to gather nearby. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoes through the canopy, shaking the very ground beneath his feet, making Manhua realize that a terrifying demon king has just entered the chat. 4 massive, shadowy demon apes drop from the trees, completely surrounding our cornered protagonist, who quickly readies his trusty copper mirror to unleash another wave of beast-scaring magic, only for the lead ape to roar right back, completely unfazed by the mirror's power. Turns out, the mirror's bizarre magic actually provoked them instead of scaring them off, forcing a sweating Manhua to prepare his explosive arsenal for a high-stakes showdown. Staring at the angry apes, a brilliant but highly chaotic idea suddenly sparks in Manhua's mind. Meanwhile, his greedy pursuers are busy hacking through the local wildlife just to keep his trail warm, leaving them completely exhausted and seriously questioning if this legendary pill is even worth the hassle. But their complaints are cut short when our boy comes soaring through the canopy with company, cheerfully thanking his senior brothers for the backup while dropping the angry ape pack right onto them, before tossing a handful of explosive flying swords to make sure the party starts with a bang. A massive explosion rips through the forest, leaving his furious rivals screaming curses at his absolute audacity, while our clever protagonist happily slips away, knowing the real threat is still the 5th-level cultivators. And right on cue, a deafening shout echoes through the trees, proving his pursuers aren't giving up, forcing Manhua to rely on his trusty mirror to keep manipulating the local beasts for survival. Echoing through the dark forest, a pack of wild demonic beasts unleashes a series of blood-curdling roars. Standing over the carnage, the exhausted pursuers realize the entire mountain's wildlife has suddenly gone completely berserk, They quickly deduce that Manhua isn't actually controlling the beasts, but merely triggering their wild emotions. His partner suggests quitting, but the greedy brute furiously refuses to let his precious prize slip away. Meanwhile, deep within the quietest corners of the mountain, the chaotic chase suddenly grinds to a halt. Our protagonist stops dead in his tracks, staring ahead with wide eyes as he spots something massive, revealing a set of thick, dark scales that shimmer ominously under the pale moonlight. A colossal black serpent looms over him, coiled tightly against the rocky cliffside while hissing in pain. Observing the thrashing beast, Manhua realizes this terrifying monster is actually suffering from some intense pain, until he notices the peeling scales, realizing the giant creature is currently in the middle of molting. This colossal serpent unleashes a deafening roar that echoes through the entire mountain range, prompting Manhua to realize this single sound was what triggered the massive beast stampede. Knowing that a demonic python is usually at its absolute weakest during its years-long molting process. Suddenly, the sheer force of the sound wave makes our boy cough up fresh blood, proving this terrifying monster's cultivation level is easily at the 8th or even 9th level, forcing him to plan a quick escape until his eyes lock onto something strange nearby. Pierced deep into the serpent's scaly back is a massive, ancient-looking flying sword, which has clearly been stuck there for years, making it an incredibly valuable treasure. Our boy violently slaps his own face to snap out of his dangerous greed, choosing to run for his life instead of getting eaten for a shiny sword. Several hours later, the exhausted pursuers finally catch up to find Manhua sitting calmly on a rock. This beefy cultivator pants heavily, mockingly asking if our boy has finally run out of steam, only for Manhua to casually pop another recovery pill, claiming he is now fully recharged. This leaves his pursuers completely demoralized as they realize they are officially out of healing medicine, prompting the furious brute to scream in frustration, demanding a fair fight without any beast-luring tricks. Shrugging casually, Manhua threatens to dive into another beast pack if they keep following him. He calmly holds up the glowing pill, reminding them he can just swallow it to level up. An absolute power move leaves the greedy brute completely speechless and choking on his own rage. Realizing they have been utterly defeated, the angry rival storms off while shouting empty threats. Meanwhile, his partner politely bows, hoping they can still be friends back at the sect. Bowing respectfully, the polite cultivator offers his early congratulations before finally making his exit. Manhua watches them disappear into the dense forest, finally left completely alone in the quiet wilderness. He collapses onto a massive boulder, completely exhausted but relieved that the chaotic chase is finally over. Half an hour passes under the blazing sun, marking the official end of the grueling 12-hour trial. With the restriction finally lifted, our boy stares at the glowing pill that is now officially his. Pulling out his trusty copper mirror, he prepares to put its bizarre duplication powers to the test. Dumping his entire stash of green spirit stones, he prays he has enough fuel for this legendary replication. This mirror works its magic, leaving him with 10 identical golden pills and a massive, satisfied grin. Holding the newly minted treasure, Manhua prepares to finally break through to the 5th layer, while a mysterious cultivator stands on a distant cliff, plotting his own long-awaited move after years of searching. Wang Tengfei plots on a distant cliff, recalling a legendary dragon that died in the Black Mountain, believing his destiny is tied to this sect as he prepares for his ultimate foundation establishment. A loyal lackey arrives to report that their elite squad is fully assembled and ready to strike, though Wang Tengfei dismisses any delays, knowing the molting beast will soon be at its absolute weakest, boasting that he has never failed since the day a bizarre blood rain fell from the heavens, leaving a mystical mark on his skin that made him feel like a supreme ruler. This ancient inheritance guided him straight to the hidden dragon corpse resting deep within the mountain, which can only be unlocked by his unique bloodline while remaining completely invisible to outsiders. With his grand plan set, the arrogant genius orders his men to march into Black Mountain, unaware that Manhua is already exploding with power as he breaks through to the 5th layer. Manhua opens his eyes to find a massive glowing lake manifesting directly inside his body, realizing he has officially broken through to the 5th layer of his chi condensation, where the newly formed Dan Lake will eventually expand into a massive spiritual sea, laying down the perfect foundation to shed his mortal shell and achieve true immortality. Thrilled by his new power, our boy realizes he can finally practice the legendary windwalking technique, but his celebration is cut short when the giant serpent's panicked roar echoes through the trees, revealing Wang Tengfei and his elite squad launching a massive, coordinated assault on the beast, prompting a hidden Manhua to realize his arrogant rival is actually hunting the molting python, as the smug genius prepares to unleash his ultimate strike to claim the ancient dragon inheritance, sending a barrage of glowing, high-grade flying swords raining down to finish the job. This high-grade flying sword slam hard against the serpent's thick scales, sending bright sparks flying everywhere, while Wang Tengfei's elite squad charges forward, eager to slice the giant beast to pieces. Watching from the shadows, Manhua realizes these powerful outsiders are led by a familiar sect uncle. Suddenly, the furious python thrashes violently, snapping its massive jaws to swallow the intruder's whole, prompting our boy to happily cheer on his new scaly friend from a safe distance. Annoyed by the struggle, the arrogant genius raises his hand to order a massive ceiling formation, sending glowing blue runes swirling through the night sky to lock the beast in place. A colossal magical array manifests directly above the cliff, crackling with intense light lightning and overwhelming power, making the giant serpent scream in absolute agony as the heavy pressure pins it down, until a majestic glowing blue dragon spirit suddenly erupts from the beast's head to fight back. Wang Tengfei smirks with absolute confidence, completely unimpressed by the beast's sudden display of power, as the majestic blue dragon spirit unleashes a blinding, ethereal light across the battlefield. But the elite squad quickly realizes the dragon spirit is nothing more than a fleeting illusion, prompting the furious serpent to retaliate by spewing a massive torrent of freezing energy. This colossal beast rears back, its crimson eyes glowing as it prepares for its final stand, hovering high above the mountain peak while the elite cultivators desperately try to surround it, until the serpent suddenly erupts, violently shedding its massive blood-red outer layer of scales, forcing the squad to dodge the toxic mist while realizing the beast has completed its molt. Staring at the vulnerable creature, the arrogant genius gloats that his ultimate prize is finally within reach, only for his lackey to gasp in horror as the ancient sword begins floating on its own. Realizing the ancient sword remained in the shed skin, Manhua eyes the supreme treasure with greedy excitement. Determined to face Wang Tengfei again, our boy refuses to be treated like an easily crushed ant. Back in safety, Manhua places the legendary sword on his mirror, dreading the spirit stone cost. Gripping the hilt tightly, he prepares to unleash the mirror's bizarre duplication magic on his new prize. Suddenly, the mirror works its magic, instantly sucking the massive sword straight into its reflective surface, leaving a completely panicked Manhua screaming in horror as his precious new weapon completely vanishes. He desperately tries to calm his racing heart, praying the mirror is just starting the duplication process. To test his theory, our boy drops a single green spirit stone onto the glass, only for the greedy mirror to instantly swallow that too, leaving him absolutely fuming at this money waster, forcing a sweating Manhua to prepare a massive pile of stones to see who is truly boss. Manhua desperately begs the greedy mirror to have mercy on his rapidly shrinking wallet, realizing he cannot stop feeding it now without losing the half-copied treasure forever. Suddenly, a blinding pillar of golden light erupts from the mirror's reflective surface, leaving our completely exhausted protagonist staring blankly at the dazzling display with dead eyes. Minutes tick by as the intense glow continues to illuminate the entire cave, until the light finally fades, leaving him holding his breath in absolute anticipation. Resting on the stone floor are two identical ancient flying swords of supreme quality, but the victory feels incredibly hollow as our boy collapses onto his back, mourning the tragic loss of 2,000 spirit stones that completely emptied his pockets, prompting him to pull out a mysterious red pill to finally cheer himself up. Staring at the mysterious red pill, Manhua wonders how high his cultivation level will soar next. Without a second thought, our boy pops the glowing red medicine straight into his mouth, sending the concentrated spiritual energy plunging deep into his newly formed inner lake. For a brief moment, a heavy silence hangs over the peaceful mountain range, until a colossal geyser of pure spiritual energy suddenly erupts from the depths, flooding the surrounding forest with a massive wave of raw, untamed power. Deep inside his cave, Manhua sits cross-legged as dark, chaotic smoke swirls around his body, pushing his cultivation all the way to the mid-sixth layer of chi condensation. A few days later, he remains completely motionless while shedding thick layers of black mortal impurities, before his eyes snap open, gleaming with the terrifying power of his newly consolidated strength. Manhua slowly stands up, shedding thick layers of foul black gunk from his newly refined body, leaving a trail of disgusting mortal impurities smeared across the cold stone floor as he walks. Splashing cold water onto his face, our boy washes away the last of the nasty sludge, revealing a completely rejuvenated cultivator with a pristine complexion and a brand new aura. Looking back at the messy bed, he realizes the sixth layer has officially cleansed his entire body. Twirling his newly lengthened hair, he marvels at how incredibly light and energetic his body feels now, realizing that with this massive power boost, very few peers in the sect can bully him anymore. Stretching with absolute satisfaction, he gloats over stealing this golden opportunity right from under Wang Tengfei's nose. Meanwhile, a loyal lackey kneels before Wang Tengfei, reporting his thorough investigation into everyone outside the sect, narrowing the suspects down to just 2 people at Black Mountain, including our very own Manhua. Wang Tengfei scoffs at the name of a rival, completely clueless about who Manhua even is. His lackey quickly explains that this random kid is the one who brutally thrashed their junior brother. Suddenly, the pieces click together in the arrogant genius's mind, sending him into a silent panic. Realizing his precious dragon inheritance was stolen, he furiously vows to tear Manhua to pieces. Dismissing his trembling lackey with a harsh shout, the enraged genius is left alone to plot his revenge. He decides to reverse his ceiling formation to track the thief despite the heavy toll on his body. Stealing his resolve, the desperate cultivator raises his hand and unleashes the forbidden tracking spell. A massive, glowing magical array manifests in the room, crackling with volatile energy as it searches the mountain. This tracking spell sweeps across the entire region, searching for any trace of the stolen dragon treasure. Meanwhile, our boy's eyes snap wide in terror as he feels an ominous gaze locking onto him. Manhua wakes up in his own bed, wondering if that chaotic chase was just a wild dream. Meanwhile, his chubby friend is outside burning paper money, weeping over what he thinks is a corpse. Sneaking up behind the crying boy, our protagonist delivers a swift smack to stop the premature funeral. Fatty immediately bursts into tears of joy, relieved his only friend didn't actually kick the bucket. His jaw drops in absolute shock upon learning Manhua has already reached the 6th layer. Though our boy keeps the dangerous dragon hunt a secret, his friend eagerly asks about flying. Deciding to show off his progress, the young cultivator channels his energy to levitate off the ground. Gently touching back down, he realizes his control over the wind is still a bit shaky. While his friend is completely amazed by the floating trick, Manhua knows he needs more practice. Ready to test his real arsenal, he strikes a pose and summons his newly duplicated ancient sword. Manhua zips through the forest canopy on his newly duplicated sword, leaving his chubby friend completely speechless. Suddenly, our boy pauses mid-air as a strange ancient incantation begins to echo directly inside his mind. Glowing golden runes flash before his eyes, revealing a hidden technique woven into his very soul. With a sudden burst of speed, he shoots straight into the sky like a rocket. Realizing a simple wave of his hand just unleashed a deadly blade of pure wind. Fatty immediately starts cheering like a proud parent, plotting to ride his friend's coattails to absolute glory, before mentioning that the highly anticipated Intersect promotion trial has officially opened for registration, prompting a curious Manhua to wonder if this is his chance to truly shine. Turns out the entire sect expected the arrogant Wang Tengfei to walk away with the sole victory, but our boy realizes crashing his rival's party might draw way too much unwanted attention. Manhua advises his friend to keep a low profile, but plans change when a thief targets their shop. Meanwhile, Wang Tengfei coughs up blood as his tracking spell confirms a powerful rival was indeed at Black Mountain. Staring at his glowing array, the frustrated genius realizes someone effortlessly severed his blood connection to the treasure. Over 20 days later, outer disciples gossip about the upcoming trial and its boring meditation rules, noting that the declining sect has replaced grand treasure hunts with a simple, straightforward duel tournament. Business is absolutely booming for the duo, leaving Fatty celebrating their massive profits while our boy meditates nearby. Turns out Manhua duplicated 100 cheap swords, carefully weathering and dyeing them to avoid any suspicion. But his peaceful scheming is suddenly interrupted by the sight of a familiar glowing yellow talisman. Hanzong, the second strongest disciple in the outer sect, arrives to summon him on official business. This sudden summons terrifies Manhua, who wonders if the powerful sect uncle saw him steal the dragon. Stepping inside the grand pavilion, Manhua prepares himself to face the powerful sect uncle. He respectfully greets Uncle Master Shangguan, who sits like a king beneath a massive tiger painting, while the old man stares down with a gaze sharp enough to pierce steel. Suddenly, the powerful cultivator flicks his wrist, launching a tiny silver needle at blinding speed, which our boy catches effortlessly between his fingers to prove his reflexes are top tier, only for the uncle to inspect the needle for any trace of the dragon's scent. Finding absolutely nothing, the greedy old man demands that Manhua hand over his storage pouch. This pouch contains nothing but cheap junk, leaving the suspicious elder completely speechless. Our boy plays dumb, knowing he already hid his legendary treasures safely with his chubby friend. When pressed about his rapid cultivation, the clever kid smoothly blames it on generous elder gifts. A scout reports that Menghao's cave is completely empty of any stolen treasures, leaving the suspicious elder to ponder his next move with a deeply furrowed brow, while our boy tries his absolute best to maintain a perfectly innocent face. Finding no immediate proof, the old man reluctantly waves his hand and dismisses him, allowing Menghao to calmly walk out of the pavilion before his heart explodes. Back inside, the greedy elder stares intensely at the tiny silver needle in his hand, deciding to literally taste the tip to detect any lingering traces of dragon energy, only for his eyes to snap wide as a shocking realization hits him hard. Meanwhile, our clever protagonist is already speeding through the forest on his flying sword, landing safely right in front of his chubby friend who was worried sick. Fatty hands back the storage pouch, anxiously asking how the tense interrogation went. Menghao admits things look bad, warning his friend that the elders definitely suspect them. Suddenly, our boy grabs his chubby friend by the collar with a wild look in his eyes, hauling him onto the flying sword as he realizes Shangguan Shu is already hot on their trail. Meanwhile, the enraged elder charges through the air, turned to hunt down the thief, realizing the kid's blood is absolutely saturated with the energy of hundreds of demon cores. This shocking discovery leaves the greedy old man obsessed with uncovering whatever massive secrets Menghao is hiding. Down in the sect streets, clueless disciples chat peacefully, completely unaware of the incoming storm, until Menghao blasts right past them on his sword, knocking them flat on their backs, closely followed by a flying, furious elder who leaves the onlookers absolutely shaking in terror. Clueless onlookers watch in absolute disbelief as the powerful elder chases our boy through the streets. Carrying his chubby friend, Menghao desperately pushes his gliding treasure to its absolute limit. Fatty panics and begs to be dropped, but our protagonist refuses to leave him behind, realizing their only hope of survival lies in reaching a highly protected sanctuary. This duo crashes hard onto the massive stone steps, scrambling upward with pure desperation, while the furious elder pursues them closely, starting to realize where they are heading. Gasping for breath, Menghao finally reaches the top of the grand platform. He raises his hand high, loudly declaring his entry into the inner sect trial, prompting a terrified Fatty to quickly sign up too as Shangguan Shu lands behind them, leaving the frustrated elder to glare at his prey, plotting his next move. This trial elder instructs them to stay on the platform and wait for the competition to begin, secretly marveling at how incredibly fast our boy managed to reach the 6th layer of chi condensation. While Fatty trembles in fear, Menghao calmly signs his his name to finalize their official registration. Watching from the sidelines, the furious elder realizes the Grand Elder is intentionally shielding his prey. He glares with absolute hatred, silently cursing the brat for finding a loophole to escape death, before reluctantly turning around and walking away to avoid causing a scene before the trial. Knowing there is absolutely no turning back now, our protagonist steels his resolve for the upcoming battle, realizing that securing the Soul Intersect promotion is his only shield against the vengeful elder. Unfortunately, only a single disciple can win this trial and claim the ultimate prize, prompting our boy to lock eyes with his arrogant rival, Wang Tengfei, who sits meditating nearby. This registration scroll updates as more brave souls sign up for the deadly trial. Shangguan Xiu delivers a chilling threat, promising our boy won't survive the first round, while Fatty sits nearby weeping, absolutely convinced they are both heading straight to their graves. Soon enough, more elite names appear on the scroll as the competition heats up, revealing formidable rivals who look ready to tear anyone apart for that single promotion spot. With the final names added, the roster of 8 competitors is officially locked in, showcasing seasoned, battle-hardened veterans who have spent years preparing for this exact moment. Manhua realizes these newcomers might actually be targeting his chubby friend to get to him. 2 days later, a massive crowd gathers to watch the highly anticipated bloodbath unfold, and with a single dramatic signal, the ultimate battle for survival finally begins. Raising his hand, the trial elder channels a surge of vibrant green energy into the sky. He lays down the brutal rules of the trial before announcing the very first match. With a commanding shout, the old cultivator points forward to summon the grand arena, causing massive jagged rocks to burst violently from the earth and assemble themselves, forming a colossal floating battleground that leaves the gathered crowd completely in awe. Staring down at the competitors, the elder officially calls the first match to begin, prompting the arrogant genius Wang Tengfei to step forward looking like a flawless immortal, while his unfortunate opponent sweats bullets, realizing he just drew the absolute worst matchup. Faced with a terrifying aura of pure energy, the poor guy immediately surrenders without a fight, leaving the crowd to mutter in disappointment as the favorite walks away completely unchallenged. This trial elder immediately calls for the second match, summoning competitor number 7 to the stage. A stern-looking swordsman steps forward, ready to absolutely obliterate whoever stands in his way. Realizing he is next, Fatty starts sweating buckets until Meng Hao tells him to just immediately forfeit. Shoved onto the massive stone platform, the terrified boy stumbles forward under the gaze of the crowd. He raises his hand to call it quits before the fight can even begin, but the ruthless opponent charges instantly, refusing to let his prey escape without drawing blood. This cold blade grazes Fatty's neck, cutting off his words as terror completely paralyzes him. Knocked clean off the stage, the poor kid tumbles backward as the crowd gasps in shock. Meng Hao catches his trembling friend, who frantically screams his surrender over and over again. Glaring at the arrogant attacker, our boy realizes that Vicious Strike was a deliberate attempt to kill. Immediately realizes this brutal assault was actually orchestrated by the vengeful elder Shangguan Xiu. At that moment, his next opponent steps up to deliver a chilling, highly dramatic death threat, leaving our boy to ironically realize his arrogant rival Wang Tengfei is actually much more likable, while the gossiping crowd eagerly whispers about how Meng Hao has officially signed his own death warrant. Surprisingly, the next match ends instantly when the opponent immediately forfeits to please the elder's lackey, setting the stage for the final match of the round between Meng Hao and a beefy axe wielder, who immediately flexes his 5th layer chi condensation cultivation by activating a massive giant technique, only for the muscular warrior to get utterly humbled before he can even swing his weapon. This effortless victory catches the attention of his next opponent, who glares with absolute fury, but our protagonist simply stands tall on the platform, ready to face whatever comes next. This giant warrior swings his massive axe down, aiming to split our boy in half. But Meng Hao doesn't even flinch, casually summoning his flying sword with his hands behind his back, which collides with the heavy weapon in a shower of blinding sparks and sheer force. Watching from the sidelines, Wang Tengfei realizes the kid is far more prepared than they anticipated, especially when a sneaky counterattack bounces harmlessly off Meng Hao's hidden defensive treasure, prompting our protagonist to unleash a barrage of flying swords that rain down on his opponent. Whispering a single command, our boy triggers the final trap to detonate with explosive force, engulfing the muscular warrior in a massive blinding blast of golden energy before a flying sword pierces clean through his neck to seal his fate forever, leaving the defeated warrior lifeless on the stone floor as Meng Hao coldly claims his victory. Leaving his defeated opponent behind, our boy delivers a chilling warning to his next challenger, while the furious elder can only watch in silence as the first round officially concludes. Moving into the second round, Wang Tengfei's opponent immediately forfeits to avoid getting absolutely pulverized, prompting Meng Hao to realize the entire tournament has been rigged by the vengeful elder. But before he can dwell on it, the trial elder steps up to announce the next match, calling our protagonist back to the stage to face his next life or death challenge. This time he is matched against Han Zong, a sinister disciple radiating pure murderous intent. Stepping onto the platform, the arrogant lackey promises to make our boy pay for disrespecting the elder, only for Meng Hao to play dumb, casually reminiscing about his early days in the sect, slowly pacing forward as he points out how incredibly broke and desperate their entire organization is. Meng Hao explains how the sect is so broke that basic pills cause bloody wars, pointing out that survival depends entirely on luck since nobody actually teaches them anything, before whispering a massive insult about how weak their supposedly powerful elder actually is. Absolutely triggered by the disrespect, the furious lackey immediately snaps and prepares to strike, unleashing a rapid flurry of strikes that collides with our boy's defense in midair, forcing both fighters to slide back across the stone platform to reassess each other. Determined to end this quickly, the opponent pulls out a magical flag to summon his treasures, sending glowing blue scrolls to spin menacingly in the air right above our protagonist's head. Rather than panicking, Manhua calmly decides to test his opponent's strength with some basic magic, summoning a massive roaring serpent of pure fire to blast his enemy to pieces. Annoyed by the fiery display, Hanzong stomps his foot to summon his own defensive magic, sending massive jagged boulders erupting from the arena floor to block the incoming blast, which quickly assemble into a towering stone golem that shields him from any harm. Our boy's roaring fire serpent collides head-on with the massive rocky defender, detonating in a spectacular burst of flames that barely leaves a scratch on the stone. Smirking behind his shield, the arrogant lackey prepares to unleash his master's signature technique, summoning glowing blue scrolls that spin around Manhua to trap him in place, while eerie red masks begin to materialize from the thick, suffocating smoke. Two massive ghostly entities now loom over our protagonist, radiating a terrifying aura of death, leaving the onlookers to whisper in shock at Hanzong's mastery of this legendary spell. Onlookers whisper in disbelief, realizing Hanzong is using a powerful treasure gifted by the vengeful elder. Meanwhile, Shangguanshu stands in the crowd, his mind drifting back to a recent interrogation, where he demanded his lackeys recount every single detail of their failed chase up Black Mountain, who explained how wild beasts inexplicably ignored our boy and attacked them instead. This makes the greedy elder realize Manhua is carrying an incredibly valuable supreme treasure. Back in the arena, our protagonist calmly analyzes the terrifying ghostly entities looming over him, before unleashing a blinding, high-speed slash to blow the toxic fog completely away, shredding the massive spectral monsters to pieces with a single, effortless wave of his hand, leaving the crowd utterly speechless as the legendary technique is instantly wiped from existence. Smirking at his shocked opponent, Manhua raises a finger to ask if it's finally his turn. Manhua casually summons a ring of flying swords, reminding his opponent of his favorite weapon. Panicking at the sight, Hanzong quickly slaps a defensive talisman onto his chest, only for a massive rain of sharp blades to instantly pour down from the sky, triggering a golden protective barrier just in time to shield him from the onslaught. But the sheer force of the impact triggers a series of violent, blinding explosions, completely engulfing the entire stage in a relentless storm of fire and debris. Shocked by the power, the arrogant lackey watches in horror as his defensive barrier shatters, leaving the gossiping crowd utterly stunned by Menghao's absurd tactic of detonating expensive weapons. Seizing the moment, our boy leaps high into the air to deliver the final blow, reminding his terrified opponent that in this brutal world, only the ruthless get to survive. Unleashing his final strike, Manhua sends his flying sword slicing through the air with lethal precision, shredding the arrogant lackey to pieces before he can even think about begging for mercy, leaving our boy to stand calmly over the corpse, while offering a rather insincere apology. This brutal victory sends shockwave through the crowd, who realize Manhua is officially a top-tier threat, while the elite genius Wang Tengfei watches from the sidelines with a deeply troubled expression. Suddenly, the pieces click together as he realizes who actually stole his precious family inheritance. But before he can act, his next opponent charges forward lifting a massive block of swords, hurling the colossal weapon with all his might in a desperate bid to claim glory, only for Wang Tengfei to casually block the entire assault with a single, effortless finger barrier. Watching the display, the biased crowd immediately dismisses Manhua as nothing more than a lucky peasant. Wang Tengfei casually channels his energy to block the incoming storm of sharp blades, effortlessly shattering the massive weapon into a million harmless pieces with a single gesture. But suddenly a massive swarm of flying swords converges on him from every direction, leaving the arrogant genius completely bewildered as he senses the overwhelming threat, before a blinding flash of pure energy erupts right in his face. When the smoke clears, the crowd gasps at the sight of his mangled, bleeding finger, prompting Manhua to smugly remind his rival of the time he used that finger to humiliate him. This impossible feat sends the spectators and elders into a state of absolute panic, while Wang Tengfei finally connects the dots, screaming that our boy stole his precious family legacy, throwing a massive temper tantrum as he vows to tear the clever thief into 1,000 pieces. Playing dumb, our boy forces his rival to explain how he spent years planning for that specific sword. Absolutely losing his mind, the elite genius summons two massive spectral beasts to reclaim his stolen family legacy, but Manhua casually swings his weapon, effortlessly slicing the roaring tiger projection into a million pieces, pushing the desperate genius to pull out his absolute final trump card, a highly expensive golden talisman. Screaming in rage, Wang Tengfei leaps high to unleash the full power of his final treasure. while our protagonist stands his ground, ready to meet him head-on as the crowd watches in silence, and the resulting mid-air collision triggers a massive blinding explosion that completely lights up the sky. Deep within Menghao's body, the sheer force of the impact activates a mysterious glowing red orb, awakening a terrifying black dragon entity that slumbers at the very bottom of his core lake. As the chaotic shockwaves of their legendary clash continue to ripple violently across the entire arena, this massive explosion finally clears, leaving the entire audience holding their breath in absolute silence, only to reveal the elite genius Wang Tengfei lying completely broken on the shattered stone floor. This impossible outcome sends the spectators into a frenzy, screaming that our boy actually won the match. But Meng Hao isn't finished yet, diving straight down to deliver a lethal finishing blow, prompting a panicked elder to scream in terror as the kid's blade crashes into the platform. Fortunately for the elite genius, a powerful cultivator steps in to shield him from the deadly impact, revealing the sect leader himself, who coldly warns our protagonist not to push things too far, while the gossiping crowd immediately bows in deep respect to their ultimate authority. With a booming voice, the leader officially declares Meng Hao the winner of this brutal tournament, leaving our boy standing victorious on the stage while his broken rival is carried off in disgrace. Having survived the chaotic clash, Meng Hao stands tall and bows respectfully to the sect leader, declaring with absolute confidence that he doesn't need any powerful patron because he is his own backer, while casually presenting his glowing sword to shut down any remaining doubts about his supreme treasure. With the matter settled, the trial elder officially announces Meng Hao as the new inner sect disciple, sending his loyal fat friend into wild cheers while his old master proudly watches him succeed. Meanwhile, the bitter elders can only sweat in disbelief at the kid's absurdly rapid rise, as the gossiping crowd finally accepts that this supposed peasant is actually an absolute cultivation genius. Far away from the noisy arena, the dark and ominous peaks of Black Mountain loom silently, where a mysterious shadowy entity mocks the sect's vulgar name and its ancient hidden history, watching from a dead tree as he finds Meng Hao's stolen demonic inheritance incredibly amusing. Watching the lightning strike, a mysterious cosmic entity vows to eventually defy the heavens themselves, noting that even with his true body asleep, this split soul found our boy's battle highly amusing. 7 days later, Meng Hao is brought before a massive portrait of the sect's legendary old ancestor, forcing him to kowtow while his guide explains the endless rules and privileges of the inner sect, prompting our boy to admit he originally thought his guide was just another stiff, arrogant cultivator. Instead, the friendly senior brother named Chen Dan bursts into laughter, absolutely thrilled by the compliment, promising to show him a top-tier cave dwelling while casually mentioning that senior sister Shu is still in seclusion. This makes Meng Hao realize that some people in this cutthroat sect might actually have a decent soul, but his new friend immediately starts lecturing him about relying way too much on exploding expensive treasures, before dropping a massive buzzkill by telling him to stop roasting wild beasts for dinner. Sitting down for tea, Chen Dan advises our boy to consolidate his massive pile of storage bags, prompting our boy to facepalm, wondering if senior sister Shu went into seclusion just to avoid this chatterbox, who immediately teases him about his crush, sending our usually calm protagonist into an absolute panic. Desperate to change the subject, the kid quickly asks about the cultivation realms beyond chi condensation, triggering another massive lecture about the legendary Dao platforms required to reach the Foundation Establishment realm, only to learn that their sect's flawless cultivation method was lost when their ancient ancestor vanished. Mapping out the increasingly absurd power levels, the ultimate goal of becoming an immortal finally comes up, sparking a moment of genuine awe in our boy as he contemplates the scale of this world. His senior brother warns him not to stay confined to their tiny, spiritually dry kingdom forever, urging him to eventually seek the brutal southern domain, where geniuses must step over endless bones to rise. Meng Hao asks if his senior brother actually plans on heading to the southern domain, but Chen Dan quickly backtracks, claiming his true dream is to restore their sect's ancient glory, striking a heroic pose that somehow makes him look like a total cartoon villain instead. Looking quietly at his eccentric guide, our boy decides to share a bit of his own past, explaining how he was just a simple scholar who wanted to get rich and travel the world, admitting that this is the first time he actually feels welcome in a cultivation sect. Thrilled by the compliment, the chatterbox immediately prepares to launch into another endless, exhausting lecture. Meanwhile, a cracked green jade scroll lies shattered on a cold, dark floor, where a heavily bandaged Wang Tengfei sits in isolation, utterly consumed by his humiliating defeat. Staring into the dark, the ruined genius vows vengeance against the peasant who stole his destiny. Staring at his bandaged hands, Wang Tengfei laughs hysterically at his own pathetic failure, until a sudden violent explosion completely shatters the entrance to his secluded chamber, revealing two powerful cultivators from his prestigious family who refuse to let him wallow, demanding he remember his noble lineage instead of crying over a minor setback. Gritting his teeth in shame, the ruined genius struggles to find his voice, before roaring his family name with renewed determination to reclaim his stolen glory. Meanwhile, Manhua sits peacefully in his new cave dwelling, absorbing pure spiritual energy, only to be startled when a glowing green message suddenly burns into the stone wall, summoning him alongside his senior brother and sister to the prestigious East Peak Great Hall, prompting our boy to prepare for whatever grand destiny or dangerous trial awaits him next. Stepping into the grand hall, Manhua, Chendan, and senior sister Shu prepare for their meeting, where a senior elder instructs them to pay their respects to the massive statue of their ancient ancestor, prompting our boy to silently note that the legendary patriarch looks more like a street brawler than an immortal. Before the elder begins to reveal a long-hidden secret about the sect's glorious past and lost legacy, explaining that their ancient peak was built entirely on a legendary manual called the Sublime Spirit Scripture, leaving the disciples utterly baffled as they try to process the sheer scale of this mythical technique, which apparently holds the key to achieving a flawless foundation and reaching the absolute peak of cultivation power, revealing that the elite genius Wang Tengfei only joined the sect to steal this exact legendary scroll. This makes Meng Hao realize he didn't just beat his rival, he completely shattered his entire life's purpose, giving our clever protagonist the ultimate opportunity to claim that supreme power for himself. This elder reveals that the legendary scripture has no written copy, existing only inside their ancestor's mind, leaving the three disciples completely stunned as they try to process this massive revelation. Turns out the ancient patriarch entered a deep state of seclusion 4 centuries ago to defy the heavens, which involves sending out 10 special jades condensed from his very own heart's blood, allowing the top inner sect disciples to enter his domain and inherit his legendary power. This legendary trial is the only way to obtain the long-lost Sublime Spirit Scripture. Raising his hand, the Chatterbox senior brother asks if anyone has actually succeeded in all this time, but the elder explains that a cultivation accident nearly killed the ancestor, halting the process until recently. Suddenly, our boy realizes he literally kicked his rival out of the final spot, earning his eternal hatred, before the elder unleashes 3 glowing beams of light to officially grant them entry into the sacred grounds. Meng Hao catches the glowing red jade, feeling the intense energy vibrating right in his palm. As the sect leader explains that these 3 jades are their tickets to inheriting the ultimate technique, suddenly the massive stone ancestor's eyes flare with a blinding mystical white light, opening a swirling cosmic blue portal that crackles with ancient power right before them, prompting the leader to urge the young disciples to step inside and claim their destiny. Without hesitation, 3 brilliant beams of light shoot straight into the swirling vortex, leaving the sect leader behind to wonder if they will return victorious or empty-handed, while secretly lamenting how exhausting it is to run a sect facing constant external pressure, planning to dump his job on whoever succeeds so he can finally retire in peace. Meanwhile, Meng Hao opens his eyes in a pitch-black void, cautiously scanning his eerie new surroundings. Looking up at the pitch-black sky, Meng Hao realizes there isn't a single star in sight, but Chen Dan quickly explains they are actually standing inside the sect's restricted underground palace, where a heavy, colorless fog rolls in and completely blocks out their surroundings, prompting the senior brother to slap his hand away before he touches the dangerous mist, as the group agrees to use their jades to locate 3 separate enlightenment spots, which leads Chen Dan to activate his own glowing green talisman with a serious expression, before pointing toward his designated path and wishing his junior siblings the best of luck, while senior sister Shu chooses her own direction and warns our boy to stay safe. Left entirely on his own, the kid watches her silhouette vanish into the thick darkness, ready to finally channel his own spiritual power into the mysterious red artifact. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoes through the darkness, catching Meng Hao completely off guard, as a terrifying skeletal old man rises from the thick fog to grab him. Whipping his head around in sheer panic, the kid realizes he is in serious trouble, facing the roaring, glowing-eyed patriarch who looks ready to swallow his soul whole. Meanwhile, back at the entrance, his senior siblings sit patiently waiting for his return, wondering why his trial is taking so much longer than their own quick runs. Deep in the void, Meng Hao sweats profusely while enduring an agonizing mental strain, counting the mysterious glowing red shards as they slowly pile up around him. Clutching his head in pure agony, our boy pushes his limits to survive this brutal trial, watching the number of crimson needles multiply as he fights to claim his ultimate prize. Meng Hao pushes through the agony, unlocking the 27th crimson needle of the legendary technique, as he sits completely enveloped in the blinding golden light of the Sublime Spirit Scripture. Meanwhile, deep within the dark cavern, the ancient patriarch himself suddenly opens his eyes, utterly bewildered to find 35 mysterious lifeblood jades floating around his secluded chamber. Realizing these foreign artifacts are somehow identical to his own sacred bloodline, saved from the brink of death by this sudden surge of energy, the old man decides to investigate, peering through the void to spy on the 3 disciples currently undergoing his trial, only to lock his gaze onto Meng Hao, instantly recognizing the kid's bizarre, stolen power. 3 days later, his worried senior siblings decide they can't wait around any longer. But just as they prepare to search, our boy casually strolls back into view. Rejoining his senior siblings, Meng Hao plays dumb and claims he simply passed out from the intense pressure. Chen Dan cheerfully admits they also failed, completely unaware that our boy is secretly hiding a massive success. Recalling the moment, a golden tide of pure spiritual energy suddenly erupted within his very soul, forcing him to endure a painful baptism as the ancient technique flooded his entire cultivation system, leaving him standing in a mystical lake under a sky painted with legendary golden runes. With this legendary technique carved directly into his core, his path to a flawless foundation is officially set, prompting the clever kid to quietly celebrate his impossible victory while keeping his face completely expressionless, knowing it is far safer to keep quiet than to explain his cheat code mirror to the elders. Meanwhile, the ancient patriarch is absolutely losing his mind, deeply regretting ever leaving that trial open to outsiders. Utterly baffled by how a mere brat could steal his ultimate legacy with so few blood crystals, this old patriarch fumes, realizing a massive horde of blood jades would have freed him from seclusion. Regretting his past arrogance, the trapped ancestor paces around his dark prison while searching for a loophole. Suddenly, a sinister plan forms in his mind to lure the entire kingdom's cultivators to his lair, planning to harvest their collective life force to finally break through to the legendary spirit-severing realm. But first, he watches the three young disciples prepare to leave his underground trial grounds. Slamming his hand onto the stone floor, the ancient monster unleashes a massive violent shockwave, sending a sudden tremor through the cavern that catches our trio completely off guard, as a massive stone stele covered in glowing golden runes erupts directly from the shattered floor, revealing the legendary chi condensation scroll of the sublime spirit scripture to the utterly stunned disciples, prompting our clever protagonist to shift his eyes, silently plotting how to exploit this sudden twist. Manhua immediately notices the stela's text is fake and impossible to actually cultivate, prompting senior sister Shu to suggest dragging the massive stone back to their sect leader, which is exactly what the trapped patriarch wants to trigger a massive chaotic baiting trap. But just as they prepare to move it, the chatterbox senior brother suddenly halts them, arguing that stealing the physical stone would only invite total disaster and sect-wide extermination, leaving the ancient monster utterly speechless as the trio simply copies the text onto jade slips, making the trapped ancestor absolutely despise this generation's overly cautious and righteous disciples, since leaving the stone behind completely ruins his grand plan to harvest the outside world. With the imprinting officially complete, Chen Dan prepares to summon their exit portal, as our clever protagonist quietly nods along, ready to escape this creepy underground prison for good. This trapped patriarch panics as the trio prepares to leave, desperate for any chance to escape. Watching them step into the glowing blue portal, the old monster realizes his prey is slipping away. Refusing to let his ultimate ticket to freedom vanish, he desperately reaches out with his trembling hand. At that exact moment, Meng Hao and senior sister Shu cross the threshold back to reality, only for a sudden violent spray of crimson energy to erupt right behind them. Safely back in the Great Hall, the relieved sect leader welcomes his three disciples home, but a rogue streak of blood-red light shoots out of the closing portal, completely ignoring Chen Dan as he tries to report their findings to his master, whipping past the stunned cultivators and darting straight toward the open temple doors. Leaving the group utterly bewildered, this mysterious red entity escapes into the outside world. This red light speeds away, causing a massive commotion across the entire region, while a massive projection of the legendary scripture suddenly paints itself across the sky, prompting rival sects in the state of Zhao to immediately notice the blinding phenomenon, as their top elders stare in absolute disbelief at the impossible heavenly sign, realizing the long-lost Supreme Manual has somehow returned to the mortal realm. Over at the Violet Sieve sect, their leader immediately orders a full-scale mobilization, with the entire sky above the Reliance sect glowing with the stolen ancient text, leaving the local disciples sweating bullets as they realize their peaceful days are officially over. Sensing the impending chaos, a powerful elder steps onto a glowing green teleportation array, ready to lead his forces straight into the storm before their rivals can claim the prize. Back in the hall, the sect leader demands to know what they touched during their trial, but after inspecting their jade rubbing, he instantly realizes the entire scripture is a total fake, leaving Meng Hao quietly relieved that his own stolen success remains completely hidden from everyone, warning the trio that rival sects are already marching to claim their ancient patriarch's legacy. Suddenly, a massive pillar of blinding white light erupts right in front of the disciples, as powerful cultivators from all over the region begin racing toward the Reliance sect, crossing vast rivers and mountain ranges in a desperate bid to steal the ultimate technique, forcing the sect to activate its massive green defensive barrier to prepare for the siege. Standing on a high cliff, the sect leader watches a massive energy beam pierce the clouds, looking up at the colorful, glowing rifts in the sky as the final battle draws near. 6 powerful cultivators hover menacingly in the sky, looking down at the sect leader on his cliff as a furious red-bearded elder bellows the name of their sect with absolute hatred, confronting the lone leader who stands firm behind his sect's glowing green defensive barrier, while the low-level disciples below tremble under the terrifying pressure of these core formation monsters. Refusing to back down, the sect leader unleashes a deafening roar to counter their oppressive aura, sending a massive shockwave through the sky to prove his sect won't go down easily. immediately, prompting a smug, purple-bearded elder to step forward and demand a full explanation for the phenomenon, which only makes our leader shrug and honestly admit he has absolutely no idea what happened, driving the greedy invaders to demand immediate surrender and the total deactivation of their defensive shield. Hearing this ridiculous threat, the sect leader simply narrows his eyes, ready to unleash his true power. Down in the courtyard, hundreds of low-level disciples lie scattered and groaning from the sheer pressure, as Senior Sister Shu desperately tries to treat a disciple with completely crushed internal organs, leaving Meng Hao and his terrified companion to realize their only hope lies with their leader. Meanwhile, the sect leader bursts into a wild, borderline unhinged laugh at the threat of total annihilation, while Chen Fan learns a harsh lesson about the absolute, terrifying reality of the cultivation world, only for the leader to admit he cannot possibly protect his people from this overwhelming force, prompting him to make the ultimate power move of casually resigning and abandoning the entire mountain. This sudden, shameless retirement leaves the Grand Elder sighing in deep, exhausted disappointment, before the former leader literally launches himself into the sky to make a swift escape, taking the Grand Elder along with him as they abandon the sect to its chaotic fate. Realizing there is no other way out, the sect leader decides to make a final drastic move, loudly announcing to the entire mountain that the legendary Reliance sect is officially disbanded starting today, leaving the gathered disciples completely speechless as their entire world is turned upside down in an instant. Turning back to the invaders, our leader threatens to detonate their grand formation if anyone gets hurt, while Meng Hao quickly realizes this sudden disbandment is actually a clever play to protect them all. Seeing no point in slaughtering leaderless rookies, the greedy rival elders reluctantly agree to his terms, figuring the ultimate scripture must be hidden somewhere deep within the abandoned mountain peaks instead, prompting the former sect leader to wave his hand and officially deactivate their massive defensive barrier, which causes the glowing green energy dome to shatter and expose the inner sect to the world. As the newly freed disciples stare up at the sky, wondering what will happen to them now, this defenseless Reliant sect temple stands completely exposed under the glowing, rune-filled sky, prompting the former sect leader to urge Grand Elder Ouyang to make their quick escape. But a deafening voice suddenly booms across the mountain, freezing everyone in their tracks. Wiping sweat from his brow, the escaping elder whips around in absolute panic to find the intruder, only to see a powerful woman in purple robes descending majestically from a lightning-charged portal, instantly recognizing her as a terrifying powerhouse from the legendary Qingluo sect of the Southern Domain. Even the greedy rival invaders are suddenly sweating bullets, realizing a massive predator has entered their hunting grounds, as the purple-dressed woman coldly blocks their escape while another massive spatial rift tears open nearby. Out steps a muscular warrior in gold armor, laughing maniacally as he joins the chaotic treasure hunt, while the smug woman mockingly welcomes this Jinshan sect protector for sniffing out their prize so quickly. This smug golden-armored warrior mocks the purple-dressed woman, demanding to know why his sect is excluded, as the two massive powerhouses face off in the sky under the blinding golden scripture, only for a sudden sharp whistling sound to slice directly through the tense atmosphere, revealing a majestic cultivator in blue robes gliding effortlessly atop a massive flying sword. Watching from below, the local elders break into a cold sweat upon recognizing this newcomer, realizing that the legendary sword sect has officially joined the chaotic race for their patriarch's legacy, leaving Meng Hao completely awestruck as he realizes just how massive the cultivation world truly is. Meanwhile, the loyal senior brother Chen Fan rushes back inside the empty temple hall, desperately sealing the hidden entrance behind a massive stone statue to protect their ancient ancestor, swearing a resolute oath to keep the patriarch's seclusion safe from the greedy invaders outside. Deep underground, the trapped patriarch cackles with glee as he senses powerful cultivators arriving at last, believing these greedy intruders will break into his chamber and unwittingly unleash him upon the world. But his excitement instantly turns to horror as he remembers a foolproof security mechanism he built, screaming in absolute rage as he realizes Meng Hao has completely ruined his escape plan once again. Meanwhile, the powerful invaders circle the sky in frustration, unable to detect any trace of the scripture, as the majestic sword sect cultivator scans the area, unable to pinpoint the source of the legendary manual. Suddenly, his sharp eyes lock onto a specific target in the crowd below, prompting him to glide down on his massive flying sword toward the loyal senior brother, offering to recruit the talented young disciple and take him away to the prestigious southern domain, leaving the surrounding disciples completely stunned as their beloved senior brother is lifted into the sky. While the local disciples gossip about this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, their former leaders feel a wave of relief. But the stubborn senior brother completely ruins the mood by screaming his absolute refusal, leaving Meng Hao and the others utterly speechless as the powerful sword cultivator narrows his eyes. Undeterred by the immense pressure, Chen Fan proudly declares he will never serve another sect. This prompts the legendary elder to ask if the kid truly understands who he is rejecting, reminding him of the ancient, prestigious legacy he is so casually throwing away right now. only for Chen Fan's insane loyalty to actually earn him a promotion to personal disciple instead. Knocking the stubborn kid out, the swordmaster prepares to leave since the scripture remains missing, which inspires the purple-dressed woman to salvage her own wasted trip by scouting a new recruit, instantly lifting a helpless senior sister Shu into the sky as the remaining disciples watch in horror. Manhua watches in absolute horror as senior sister Shu is suddenly snatched away right before his eyes, whisked up into the sky by the powerful purple-dressed woman like a helpless prize, while our boy's chubby friend stands nearby, completely oblivious and chewing on a metal dagger, dreaming of returning home to become the most ridiculously wealthy landlord in the entire state. Suddenly, the golden-armored warrior spots the kid's bizarre habit and stops dead in his tracks, realizing those legendary spirit teeth are the perfect fit for his own sex's ancient, lost technique, prompting him to snatch up the screaming fatty as Mungho desperately calls out his name. But the powerful warrior suddenly locks eyes with our main character, sensing something far more incredible, leaving Mungho sweating bullets as he realizes his deepest secrets might be completely exposed. Meanwhile, the other legendary cultivators prepare to depart with their newly acquired unconscious disciples. This golden-armored warrior suddenly reaches down with a massive red energy hand to snatch Manghao too, but a sudden violent burst of crimson energy erupts from the ground to block his path, sending a massive wave of ancient pressure rippling across the entire mountain to shock the invaders, who are instantly forced to retreat as the terrifying red mist sweeps across the courtyard, while the remaining low-level disciples instantly collapse into a deep, magical slumber from the fumes. Staring in absolute horror, the powerful invaders break into a cold sweat at this sudden intervention, as a colossal red mist projection of the legendary patriarch Reliance suddenly materializes over the peaks, because deep underground the trapped ancestor realizes he will be stuck forever if everyone leaves, prompting him to unleash his ultimate power to protect Manghao, his final ticket to freedom, with the massive projection's eyes snapping open in a blinding, terrifying white glare. This sudden wave of ancient pressure hits the greedy invaders hard, forcing them to cough up blood, with their treasures shattering as even the strongest powerhouses bleed from the sheer weight of his presence. Meanwhile, the former sect leader breaks into a cold sweat, realizing he disbanded the sect right before its founder. Looming over them, the massive red face booms with rage at their audacity to threaten his only remaining disciple, prompting the terrified swordmaster to desperately threaten the ancient monster with his own sect's wrath. While the purple-dressed woman quickly tries to play the friendship card by mentioning her ancestor's close bond with him, even the arrogant golden-armored warrior completely loses his tough guy act, bowing and begging the patriarch for mercy. Amused by their terror, the patriarch orders them to get lost, though he generously lets them keep the useless rookies, which sends the three legendary powerhouses blasting into the sky, like shooting stars to make their swift escape, leaving the remaining local invaders to scramble and flee in absolute panic before the ancient monster changes his mind. This terrifying ancient patriarch spares the invaders solely to deliver a warning to their respective sects, accepting the sudden disbandment of his beloved sect with a surprisingly calm shrug of indifference, but he leaves Manghao with a legendary crimson spear to obliterate anyone who dares touch him. Hearing his final, booming threat, the terrified rival elders waste no time and scramble away in panic, while the unconscious disciples are suddenly lifted into the air by a strange, invisible force, leaving our boy standing completely alone in the courtyard as a massive shockwave sweeps the area, blowing away the lingering red mist to reveal the absolute silence of the abandoned mountain, prompting Manghao to look around in utter disbelief as the reality of the situation sinks in, with his fellow disciples still floating unconsciously and the entire mountain completely cleared of enemies. This legendary Reliance sect is officially left empty, marking the end of an era for everyone. Feeling deeply ashamed for abandoning the sect, the former leader urges his companion to make their quick escape, and the two disgraced elders waste no time soaring away into the distant, misty mountains, leaving a massive vortex of crimson energy to swirl violently around the completely abandoned courtyard, where Manghao immediately starts kissing up to the ancient ancestor with some hilariously shameless flattery, only for the annoyed patriarch to flick his forehead and roast his terrible acting skills. Turns out, that terrifying display of power was actually just a massive bluff to scare the invaders, prompting the fading ancestor to demand our boy lure every local expert to his tomb, promising a legendary reward while forcefully planting the secret entrance coordinates directly into his brain, before completely dissolving into mist, leaving a bitter warning that their survival is now permanently linked. Standing entirely alone in the silent courtyard, Manghao looks around at his empty new reality. Standing entirely alone in the silent courtyard, Manghao realizes his entire sect has vanished into thin air. He takes comfort knowing Chen Fan and Fatty are off to join prestigious new sects, while hoping senior sister Shu finds peace and success wherever her new path leads her. Wondering if their paths will ever cross again in this massive, unpredictable cultivation world. Deciding it is finally time to move on, our boy prepares to leave the empty mountain behind, soaring gracefully through the sky atop his flying sword as he bids farewell to his old life. Reflecting on how he entered the mountain as a mere mortal but leaves as a powerful cultivator, Manghao resolves to return to his hometown of Yunji County after 3 long years away. Traveling for a full day, he reaches the vast North Sea, but quickly realizes he needs a boat. Luckily, a mysterious old ferryman appears right on cue to offer him a ride across the water. Boarding Boarding the ferry, Manhwa chats with a little girl who offers him wine and asks about his hometown, prompting the old ferryman to praise Yunji County as a blessed land attracting powerful high officials lately, though our boy has never heard of these auspicious signs while enjoying the surprisingly excellent wine. Marveling at the old man's deep wisdom accumulated from 20 years of carrying travelers across the water. Still, Manghao can't help but ask why this obvious lake is grandly named the North Sea, earning a philosophical lecture about how reality is entirely defined by one's own perception and mindset, leaving him completely speechless as he quietly sips his drink and ponders the profound lesson, until the small wooden boat finally drifts ashore to deliver him safely to his destination. Waving goodbye to the mysterious duo, Manghao watches them sail back into the misty waters, before turning his gaze forward, ready to face whatever secrets and challenges await him back home. This old ferryman's philosophical words about lakes and seas echo in the air, prompting Manghao to close his eyes as he reflects on the vastness of the sea, sitting quietly by the shore to digest this sudden, profound wave of enlightenment, which causes the spiritual core lake inside his body to violently ripple and expand, unleashing a massive roaring ocean of energy that mirrors the ancient scripture in the sky. Completely oblivious to the chaos, he absorbs the natural spiritual energy flooding into his body, as vibrant green currents swirl around him while the water thrashes in absolute frenzy, triggering a legendary Tao enlightenment thanks to the rare dragon core nestled deep inside him, transforming the entire landscape around him into a golden sea of pure concentrated power. Finally, the storm settles, leaving our boy sitting peacefully by the quiet, ordinary water once more. Stretching his limbs after a long session, Manghao feels completely refreshed and full of vitality, realizing he has officially broken through to the absolute peak of the 7th level of chi condensation. This sudden breakthrough reminds him of ancient texts describing powerful demons that can possess mountains and rivers, prompting him to bow deeply to the lake, promising to return and help it become a true sea, before he finally sets off and arrives at the bustling streets of his hometown, Yunji County. Walking past a familiar mansion, our boy chuckles at his childhood daydreams of marrying a wealthy local heiress. But those silly memories quickly fade as he decides to visit his family's old abandoned house. Pushing open the creaky wooden gates, he steps into the clean, surprisingly well-maintained courtyard of his youth, only to be confronted by an old neighbor who instantly recognizes him and calls out in shock, welcoming the long-lost kid back home with open arms and offering to cook him a warm meal. Sitting down with his old neighbors, Manghao listens as they explain why they moved into his empty home. He politely offers them a heavy bag of silver to buy the family property back, but the kind couple flatly refuses the cash, treating him like their very own son, prompting our boy to secretly leave the money behind anyway before heading out to find an inn. Walking through the night, he realizes that even as a cultivator, some mortal bonds are impossible to sever. This next morning, a familiar wooden carving outside a local shop instantly catches his attention, which leads the elderly shopkeeper to recognize him and gasp in absolute shock, desperately shaking Manghao for any news about his missing son, our boy's chubby friend Yukai, prompting the kid to spin a comforting lie about his friend successfully learning a great trade, leaving the tearful old man weeping with immense gratitude just to know his son is still alive. Remembering the tragic cover story he made up for another lost friend, Manghao sighs quietly. He bids farewell to the relieved old man, wishing him well before continuing his journey. Deciding to skip Xiaohu's unfamiliar hometown, our boy plans his next visit to Fugui's family, confident that the chubby kid's weird teeth will actually help him thrive in his new sect. Meanwhile, at the wealthy Lai family estate, a local bully is busy threatening the terrified household, demanding they hand over their daughter-in-law to satisfy his creepy desires in exchange for mercy, leaving the poor girl weeping in terror while her father-in-law trembles with absolute rage. Snapping at the sheer audacity, the proud patriarch orders his guards to throw the scumbag out, but the arrogant bully simply laughs it off, promising severe consequences as he stormily departs, leaving the desperate father to reassure his family that justice will somehow prevail in the end. Standing alone in his courtyard, Fugui's worried father sighs deeply while wondering where his son could be. Just as he laments his son's long absence, a calm, familiar voice suddenly echoes from behind him. Manghao steps forward in a soft glow, introducing himself as Fugui's close friend and fellow cultivator. This old man gasps in shock, instantly recognizing our boy as one of the kids who vanished years ago. Hearing that his son is safe and thriving abroad, the emotional father weeps tears of absolute relief. Our boy promises to handle the local bullies, asking only for 3 custom spears in exchange for his help. Meanwhile, at the Zhao family fanner, as a lazy young master listens to his subordinate's pathetic excuses, this red-haired bully desperately points to his bruised cheek, claiming the Li family brutally insulted their household. Turns out this young master is Zhao Hai, Menghao's former disciple, who immediately calls out the bully's self-inflicted slap. Though completely unimpressed by the lie, he plans to visit the Li family after finishing his upcoming breakthrough. 7 days later, the custom spears are finally ready and laid out in the courtyard. Manghao examines the craftsmanship, noting they look exactly like the patriarch's legendary weapon, and with a casual wave of his hand, he effortlessly levitates them with glowing green energy, sending the terrified servants straight to their knees as they scream about a real immortal, while Fugui's father gapes in shock, wondering if his own lazy son became a god too. Cutting the celebration short, our boy warns that their uninvited guests have finally breached the front gates. prompting the red-haired bully to barge in alongside his smug, flame-wielding cultivator boss. But the young master instantly freezes, recognizing the terrifying monster standing right in front of him, breaking into a cold sweat as his entire life flashes before his eyes. Meanwhile, the clueless bully keeps bragging, completely oblivious to his boss, desperately begging him to shut up. Zhao Hai delivers a brutal slap to his own subordinate, screaming at him to shut his mouth, sending the clueless bully flying across the grass in a spectacular display of instant regret, before immediately dropping to his knees to beg for mercy from his terrifying former senior brother. Manhua calmly stares him down, reminding the trembling young master of his notoriously ruthless temper, which prompts Zhao Hai to nod frantically while his flame-wielding companion sweats in absolute terror. Desperate to save his own skin, the fire cultivator tries to extinguish his useless magic, but the intense heat turns against him, forcing him to beg beetroot while engulfed in flames, prompting our boy to casually point a finger and permanently strip away his magical cultivation, leaving the ruined cultivator to cough up blood as his spiritual power completely shatters. Ordering the terrified group to carry their broken friend away, Manhua watches them scramble off in relief. Uncle Lee stands completely dumbfounded, struggling to process the sudden revelation about his son's friend. Bowing politely, Mao apologizes for the trouble while the old man frantically waves off his modesty. Our boy explains his close bond with Fatty, making it clear he would never abandon a friend's family. With his business concluded, he quietly slips away while the grateful household wishes him safe travels. Left behind, the emotional father weeps tears of joy, eager to brag to their ancestors about this glorious day. Walking through the quiet streets, Manghao decides to visit one final nostalgic spot before leaving town. This brings him right back to the cliffside cave where his wild cultivation journey first began. He remembers when senior sister Shu was a peak cultivator, realizing he has finally matched her old strength. Pondering how these 3 years formed a perfect circle, he wonders what new beginning awaits him next, only to laugh at how he was broke then and remains equally broke now, just with different currency. Standing near his old cave, Manghao is suddenly interrupted by a voice predicting his return. Looking up in annoyance, our boy demands to know why this uninvited guest is lurking around. Turns out it is the greedy elder, who has been waiting to corner him without any sect rules interfering. Realizing a fight is inevitable, our boy immediately dives off the cliff on his flying sword. This old cultivator leaps after him with a maniacal laugh, telling the kid to run his hardest. Unleashing a toxic green blast, the elder gloats about using Menghao's secret treasure for his own breakthrough. But our boy quickly retaliates, summoning his trusty wooden shields to intercept the incoming wave of energy. Defensive treasures collide with the green flames, triggering a massive explosion that echoes through the forest. Sweeping the smoke aside, the old man gasps upon sensing our boy's newly advanced cultivation level. Pressed by a tight deadline to harvest a rare herb, the greedy elder resolves to kill him within 2 days. Flying away on his sword, Menghao realizes his opponent is way too strong to fight head-on, while the greedy elder pursues him relentlessly across the vast winding mountain ranges below, forcing our boy to push his speed to the absolute limit just to stay alive. Meanwhile, a powerful elder presents a massive group of outer sect disciples for a special trial, asking his eccentric rival what he thinks of these fresh recruits over a game of Go, which prompts the wild-looking old monster to praise the sect's surprisingly impressive lineup of talent. Eager to settle their high-stakes wager, the elder proudly presents a glowing, rare sky crystal stone, while his rival counters with a coveted piece of shattered star as his own betting chip. This challenge is simple, requiring the young disciples to scale a treacherous peak and retrieve a flag, prompting the confident elder to boast that his kids will strip the entire mountain completely bare. Old Man Song proudly declares that any low-level disciple can try to loot his mountain, but he coldly warns that anyone who ends up as beast food has only themselves to blame, prompting his rival to boast about his elite disciples while Song laughs at their impending doom. Down below, the recruits quickly realize they are just glorified game pieces in a high-stakes bet, before their elder barks out orders, promising a massive promotion to whoever grabs the flag first. Unleashing a collective war cry, the eager crowd rushes forward to claim their glorious future, while the smug elders watch from above, completely detached from the chaos about to unfold. Suddenly, massive white werewolves leap from the snowy woods, instantly turning the trial into a nightmare, as giant yeti monsters join the ambush, scattering the terrified disciples in absolute panic, leaving the greedy old master to gloat about how his pets will easily chew them up. Flying over the snowy peaks, Menghao senses spirit beasts ahead and plans to use them as a shield. Turns out the two eccentric elders have set up a high-stakes bet on this very treasure mountain, with a beast-infested forest blocking the path and a complete ban on any divine sense interference, leaving the terrified outer sect disciples to scramble through the deep snow while fighting for their lives. While the smug beastmaster gloats about his pets easily overpowering the weak low-level cultivators. An hour later, the surviving disciples desperately push forward, hoping to reach the safe zone ahead, only for a massive gray wolf to leap from the shadows, instantly shattering their fragile hopes. Watching from above, the rival elder mocks the pathetic performance of the supposedly elite disciples, which prompts the furious sect leader to threaten his fleeing recruits with instant expulsion if they retreat. Meanwhile, the eccentric old monster laughs, inviting any passing cultivator to try and steal his life savings. This rival elder tries to stand up and intervene, but his movement is instantly cut short, because the eccentric beastmaster Beastmaster reminds him of their strict agreement to finish their chess game first, leaving the proud sect leader to stew in his silent fury while his disciples suffer below. Meanwhile, Manhua pushes his body to the absolute limit, gritting his teeth through the intense pain, as the greedy elder pursues him relentlessly, cursing our boy's surprisingly stubborn survival skills. Spotting the demon-infested mountain ahead, the kid decides to dive straight into the chaotic danger zone, while the eccentric old monster boasts about his rare mutant snow beasts guarding the peaks, prompting his rival to brag about a genius disciple who specializes in subduing such wild creatures. Unfortunately, that genius disciple is currently screaming in absolute terror as his plan horribly backfires, with a massive, muscular white ape roaring in triumph after easily crushing the arrogant intruder. While his rival looks on in deadpan silence, the eccentric old monster laughs hysterically, pointing out that an arrogant outsider has actually breached their sacred trial grounds. Down below, a massive white ape corners our boy, ready to crush him to pieces. But Manhua calmly readies his weapon, aiming directly at the beast's weakest point, triggering a sudden, spectacular explosion that completely vaporizes the giant monster in seconds. Examining his trusty copper mirror, the kid realizes its light scrambles their internal energy, which leaves his greedy pursuer sweating in absolute shock at the seemingly effortless kill, sending the eccentric beastmaster into a panic while his rival finds the kid highly amusing. Meanwhile, a group of struggling disciples coordinates a desperate attack against a spiked bear, unleashing a coordinated strike that finally draws blood from the massive roaring beast. This surviving disciples watch in absolute awe, wondering what kind of overpowered cheat weapon Manhua is hiding. Meanwhile, the rival elder laughs hysterically, mocking how easily these mutant beasts are getting thrashed. Gritting his teeth, the Beastmaster insists that a fancy weapon won't save someone with such low cultivation. Right on cue, a massive mutant mammoth blocks the path, ready to trample the intruders into frozen paste. This legendary beast is supposedly invincible to anyone below Foundation establishment, making the old monster gloat. But Manhua doesn't care about power scaling, slicing through the giant beast in one clean, bloody strike. Leaving the carnage behind, our boy flies toward the snowy peaks, hoping the heavy demonic aura deters his pursuer. Suddenly, a strange object catches his eye, sitting completely undisturbed amidst the rocks and snow. With a flawless mid-air spin, he swoops down and snatches the mysterious bottle right off the ground. Realizing these are high-grade medicinal pills, he happily claims them because finders keepers is the ultimate law. This rival elder chuckles at the kid's luck while Song boasts about his savage python-headed deer beast, which instantly gets its backside vaporized by the copper mirror before it can even roar, leaving the Beastmaster twitching in denial as he desperately hypes up his legendary giant eagle, only for the majestic bird to suffer the exact same explosive fate a second later. Watching the kid snatch up his prized heaven snaring net, the panicked old man tries to run, but his smug rival holds him back, reminding him of their strict finders keepers agreement. While high up on the snowy peak, the trial's red victory flag flutters in the wind. Finally reaching the summit, Manhua takes a breather, hoping his greedy pursuer has finally given up, when he suddenly spots a glowing five-colored storage pouch sitting right beneath the flag. Happily claiming the legendary loot, our boy accidentally knocks the entire trial flag over in his excitement. Having secured the ultimate loot, Manhua casually glides down the mountain on his flying sword. Meanwhile, the eccentric Beastmaster stares in absolute horror at his slaughtered collection of mutant pets, completely speechless as he processes how easily his legendary guardians were turned into frozen roadkill. Down below, the surviving disciples are throwing a massive tantrum over their stolen trial rewards. But the Beastmaster quickly reminds his rival of their strict finders keepers agreement, forcing the frustrated sect leader to sit back down and finish their high-stakes chess match. With the trial flag knocked over, the two old monsters reluctantly agree to call their bet a draw, prompting the rival elder to immediately issue a brand new trial task to his waiting disciples, declaring that anyone who peacefully trades for Manhua's spear gets an instant promotion, leaving the eager crowd to bow in unison as they prepare for their next mission. 7 days later, Manhua arrives at a massive city protected by a glowing spiritual barrier. Realizing this place isn't for mortals, but rather a bustling hub built entirely for cultivators. Flashback to a few hours earlier, our boy is busy counting his massive mountain of loot, which includes thousands of spirit stones and mysterious pills he cannot safely identify on his own, prompting him to examine a strange landscape scroll that seems to emit faint beastly roars. Next, he inspects a miniature black net that expands to trap enemies with spiritual energy. But the real prize is the glowing five-colored storage pouch snatched from the snowy summit. Peeking inside, his mind is completely blown by a pocket dimension large enough to hold mountains, sending him into a joyful chibi dance over his newly acquired supreme treasure status, until he remembers he basically robbed a major sect and must now tread very carefully. Approaching the massive city gates, Manhua decides to head inside to identify his mysterious pill loot, but two guards hovering on flying swords immediately stop him, demanding a spirit stone toll, prompting our boy to play dumb, politely bowing while pretending to be a clueless low-level cultivator. This guards explain the city rules, warning him that fighting is strictly forbidden before handing over an entry token, leaving him to grumble about losing a single precious spirit stone as he enters the bustling streets. Spotting several local medicine shops, he decides to compare his loot with their stock to save money, as he spends the next few days browsing various merchants and subtly inspecting their high-grade merchandise. 3 days later, he happily calculates that his 8 spirit-building pills are worth a small fortune, seeking answers for his remaining rare pills by heading straight toward the prestigious Baizhen Pavilion, where a charming receptionist greets him with a warm smile, offering to help him with his business. Inside the pavilion, Meng Hao asks the receptionist for jade slips detailing medicinal pills, and she happily guides him. Rejecting the basic options, he gets shown a cracked ancient slip recording rare pills across the entire southern domain, which normally is a risky buy, but our boy has his trusty copper mirror to prevent any breakage. Sensing a sale, the charming receptionist leans in close, offering a discount in exchange for a little gratitude, leaving the kid completely flustered as he desperately plays the role of a clueless, innocent scholar. Amused by his panic, she leans in closer and teasingly demands he call her big sister instead of being formal. Moments later, Meng Hao hands over a hefty pile of spirit stones to secure his prized purchase, before casually walking out of the grand pavilion to test his newly acquired knowledge in private. Scanning the slip with his spiritual energy, he successfully identifies his mysterious pills and celebrates a successful deal. Meanwhile, the receptionist watches him leave, noting his decent cultivation but laughing at how incredibly green he seems. Walking through the busy streets, Meng Hao is suddenly stopped when an old acquaintance recognizes him. Turns out it's a former sect brother bowing to a smug senior, eager to introduce our boy. Instantly, the surrounding crowd starts whispering rumors about the legendary disciple and his overpowered spear. Finding himself completely surrounded by greedy cultivators, the kid calmly asks what they actually want. Stepping forward, a fan-wielding snob politely claims they only want to admire his legendary weapon. Our boy stares back in deadpan silence, definitely not buying this incredibly obvious trap. Yet the smug leader keeps pushing, wearing a fake smile while demanding a quick peek. Behind him, the rest of the greedy mob chimes in, practically drooling over the prospect of free loot. Deciding to skip the polite negotiation, Meng Hao firmly grips his massive black spear, daring anyone who wants to court death to step up and take a closer look. This surrounding crowd whispers in disappointment, unimpressed by the supposedly legendary spear's plain appearance. Meanwhile, Meng Hao plans his escape route, knowing he needs to ditch his useless disguises immediately. Suddenly, a group of elite disciples in matching robes marches through the crowded streets, leaving our boy sweating as he realizes these mountain sect members are blocking his only exit. Hoping to score some easy influence, a fan-wielding snob eagerly bows to greet the powerful newcomers, only to get completely ignored as the elite group walks right past his pathetic attempt. Instead, the powerful disciples bow deeply to Meng Hao, politely asking to share a friendly meal, which leaves his former sect brother watching in absolute awe at our boy's incredible influence. Smiling warmly, the elite leaders ask if this is the legendary weapon that dominated the mountain, prompting Meng Hao to calmly confirm their suspicions, ready for whatever scheme they pull next. Watching from afar, the beautiful receptionist finds Meng Hao's sudden change in composure highly intriguing. Meanwhile, the elite disciples politely confront our boy, asking to buy his legendary black spear, promising that their powerful sect will compensate him with an incredibly generous offer. They even warn him that without their elder's protection, he would already be dead. But Meng Hao casually claims the weapon is just a worthless piece of junk, prompting the frustrated disciples to drop their polite act and demand he sell it anyway. Realizing they are begging to get scammed, our boy decides to let them bid, which immediately triggers a fierce bidding war as they desperately try to outdo each other. Amused by their greed, the kid realizes their master promised a massive reward for the spear, leading the desperate disciples to pool all their savings just to secure the ultimate prize. One desperate disciple starts the bidding by offering 3 high-grade heavenly water pills instead of cash, but his rival immediately counters with 7 earth spirit pills, sparking a loud shouting match. Refusing to back down, the angry rival slams his hand down to summon his ultimate trump card, revealing a glowing green underworld reaping nail that can freeze an enemy's wounds with icy energy, which leaves the surrounding crowd completely stunned by the appearance of such a legendary sect treasure. Whipping out his own treasure, the first bidder counters with a versatile fiery heavenly river fan, leaving Meng Hao sweating as he realizes this crazy bidding war might get him blacklisted. These two rivals continue throwing in rare, high-value pills, completely losing their minds over the plain-looking spear, until they finally decide to pool their treasures together and let their elder choose the winner. Grabbing the spear in unison, they profusely thank our boy for parting with his supposedly priceless weapon. Sweating bullets, Meng Hao watches the two happy disciples walk away with his worthless spear. Meanwhile, an old cultivator on a balcony sighs at how gullible the younger generation has become, pointing out that they just traded legendary treasures for a completely ordinary iron spear, leaving his companion to burst out laughing at the sheer absurdity of the trade. Flying away in his fancy new robes, our boy realizes he needs to find a hiding spot immediately. Back on the snowy peak, the smug elder lectures his rival about maintaining perfect emotional control, bragging about his sect's superior mental discipline while offering some unsolicited spiritual advice, only for his disciples to suddenly return, proudly announcing they secured the supreme treasure. Thrilled by their success, the elder promises them instant promotions while his rival fumes in the background, as the clueless duo proudly presents the worthless piece of junk to their master. This smug elder proudly summons the spear to gloat in front of his rival. But the moment he grabs the rusty iron, his smug smile instantly turns to horror. Cluelessly, his top disciples proudly list the massive fortune of legendary treasures they traded away, sending his rival elder into a hysterical fit of tears in his eyes laughter at their sheer stupidity. Veins popping on his forehead, the humiliated master screams that they bought a worthless piece of junk, while his rival happily tells him to calm his inner energy and finish their chess match. This furious roar echoes across the entire mountain range, leaving the local cultivators gossiping in absolute awe. Meanwhile, Manhua safely retreats to a secluded mountain cave to finally spend his massive loot, emerging months later having successfully broken through to the 8th stage of chi condensation, though he immediately grumbles about how his greedy copper mirror is draining his spirit stone supply. Manhua calculates that reaching the 9th stage of chi condensation will cost a staggering fortune, knowing he lacks the backing of a major sect and must rely solely on himself, since surviving his harsh childhood taught him that true strength only comes from absolute self-reliance. Suddenly, a massive beam of spiritual energy erupts from the forest, signaling his successful breakthrough, prompting our boy to fly toward the capital of the Zhao Kingdom to avoid any lingering enemies, while reminiscing about his failed scholar days before he traded books for the path of cultivation. Along the way, a friendly traveler mistakes him for an exam candidate and offers a carriage ride, leading to a polite exchange where the enthusiastic scholar praises Menghao's noble family name, which prompts our curious cultivator to ask what truly defines a righteous follower of Confucianism, only to leave his new companion completely speechless by asking an even deeper question about life. Staring into the cold, Menghao reflects on how snow can only survive in the bitter winter, noting that drawing close to warmth brings its demise, no matter how much it yearns for summer. Watching the flakes melt instantly in his palm, he realizes this world simply isn't meant for them as their carriage finally rolls through the massive, snow-covered gates of the bustling capital city. Stepping down, our boy politely bids farewell to his traveling companion before heading out on his own, leaving the inspired scholar to remember this mysterious traveler for the rest of his highly successful life. Walking deeper into the city, Menghao spots the legendary Tang Tower towering over the snowy streets, prompting him to step inside and admire a massive painting depicting the glorious Great Tang. Scaling the massive pagoda, he stands atop the snowy roof to look out over the horizon, only to realize that even from this height his ultimate destination remains completely out of sight. Reflecting on his past, Menghao remembers wanting to find his missing parents in the Great Tang, as he sits quietly on the snowy rooftop, letting his mind finally settle in the cold night. He vividly recalls the day his father stood by the window, staring reluctantly into a strange purple wind, while his mother wept softly in the background, leaving him certain they are still alive somewhere. Determined to reunite with them, he stares out over the vast, snow-covered city below, feeling completely at peace as our boy decides it is finally time to hit the road, leaping off the massive pagoda to fly away on his trusty green lotus platform, only to suddenly freeze in midair as a bizarre sensation sends shivers down his spine. Turning around to witness a massive beam of blinding spiritual light erupting from the tower, realizing only cultivators can see this energy and wondering how he missed it until now. Looking down, Menghao spots a crowd of people kneeling and worshipping beneath the glowing tower, as a blinding beam of spiritual energy erupts straight into the heavens with crackling lightning, which quickly morphs into a massive, terrifying vortex of dark clouds and electric currents. Sweating in disbelief, our boy realizes there is something incredibly sinister hidden inside the storm, revealing a chaotic tempest of crackling lightning and millions of swirling ancient human bones, unleashing a terrifying wave of malevolent energy that echoes across the entire capital city. Deciding that staying around is a terrible idea, Menghao immediately books it over the rooftops, flying away on his trusty green lotus platform to put some distance from this madness. Yet he cannot shake the chilling sight of a massive coffin floating amidst those bones, where a withered skeletal corpse sits cross-legged on the lid, surrounded by a terrifying undead army. Locking eyes with the ancient corpse, Menghao notices 7 star-like specks orbiting its gray pupils. Instantly, a stabbing pain erupts in his mind as black mist begins seeping from his pores. Realizing this terrifying encounter with the mysterious tower was definitely not a mere illusion. Booking it out of the capital, our boy tries to run from the creepy supernatural phenomenon, only to discover that a portion of his flesh has actually started to wither away. This is a pretty brutal consequence of locking eyes with that bizarre undead monster. Worse yet, the constant stream of black mist makes him look like a literal beacon, forcing him to seek shelter in a cave, though the smoke easily passes through solid stone. With no other choice, the kid keeps running through the mountains to disperse the annoying vapor, but nightfall only turns the mist into a glowing white beacon that practically screams his location. 7 days of non-stop running later, Menghao collapses onto the forest floor completely exhausted, realizing his withered flesh has finally healed, but this annoying beacon of mist won't stop. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps ruins his short break, forcing him back on high alert, as 3 elite cultivators from the Wind Chill sect march directly toward his hiding spot. Using a cracked tracking pearl, they easily pinpoint the massive source of death aura nearby. which finally explains to our boy that his glowing mist is actually burned up life force, prompting their smug leader Yan Ziguo to politely demand an explanation for the creepy phenomenon. But Manhua immediately bolts in a flash of light, leaving the snob completely speechless. Refusing to let him escape, the angry disciple leaps forward and summons a massive skeletal hand, leaving our boy to dryly question his aggressive definition of a polite request. Manhua hurls his flying swords forward, commanding them to detonate right in his pursuers' faces, and a massive explosion erupts, leaving the shocked disciples shielding themselves from the fiery blast. Coughing through the smoke, they realize they are dealing with an 8th-stage powerhouse carrying a legendary treasure, as one disciple suddenly remembers rumors about a feather fan owned by a kid named Manhua, which prompts their smug leader to reach into his robes, wondering if this is their target, revealing a wanted poster with a hilariously derpy drawing of our boy and instructions to test him. Grinning like a maniac, the smug leader decides his luck has finally taken a turn for the better. Meanwhile, Manhua grumbles about these persistent pests, seriously contemplating just wiping them out to cover his tracks, realizing that while the creepy smoke is making him irritable, these guys definitely deserve a beatdown, especially when his leaking life force is literally trailing a giant, terrifying skull in the sky. A random cultivator panics as the entire sky suddenly turns an ominous crimson color, sending powerful core formation Grand Elders into a frenzy over a shockwave traveling across the southern domain, while another legendary expert warns that this terrifying sound carries enough power to annihilate all existence. Suddenly, a massive, blinding crack tears straight through the heavens like a jagged bolt of lightning, leaving Manhua completely paralyzed with fear as he watches the very fabric of reality rip apart. Standing on the cliffside with his life force still leaking, our boy watches the apocalypse unfold, as the world plunges into darkness, illuminated only by that bleeding crimson tear in the sky, which suddenly shoots a terrifying beam of red energy straight down toward the mountain range below. A deafening shockwave blasts across the forest, forcing him to shield his eyes from the blinding white light, prompting our exhausted cultivator to desperately pray that this ridiculous bad luck finally leaves him alone. Little does our boy know, a terrifying rumor is sweeping the southern domain about a giant corpse falling from the sky. 7 days later, a glowing blue seizing array erupts beneath his feet, trapping him in place, leaving Manhua to stare down at the glowing restriction with absolute annoyance. Turns out those persistent wind chill sect disciples have completely surrounded him to prevent any escape, though their tracking bead instantly cracks from the sheer strain of holding the seal, prompting their smug leader to grin as he gloats about finally catching his elusive target. Glaring at his persistent stalker, our boy dryly notes that the coward brought some serious backup, as a powerful presence begins descending from the clouds on a massive flying sword, revealing Lu Daoyun, a formidable 9th-stage chi condensation expert ready to collect the bounty, leaving our sweating cultivator to realize this powerhouse is a monster he cannot hope to beat. This smug leader gloats about their trap, demanding Manhua hand over his legendary treasure to survive, but his speech is abruptly cut short as 2 massive white wolves leap from the bushes behind him, forcing the panicked cultivator to summon his purple skeletal hand to block the sudden beastly ambush. Yet before he can react, a lethal projectile pierces straight through his skull from behind. Manhua calmly recalls his deadly green nail, holding a mysterious scroll he prepared beforehand. Turns out our boy secretly released his Mist Beast and readied his traded treasures to counter-ambush them, and with a cold glare, he immediately orders his summon to target the enemy's female cultivator. Lunging forward, the giant wolf forces the terrified woman to desperately retreat in absolute panic, only for Manhua to suddenly materialize right behind her, grabbing her arm with a chilling whisper, as he effortlessly crushes her precious sealing bead, shattering their grand array into useless sparkling dust. Shattering the grand array, Manhua releases a burst of sparkling energy that leaves the enemies completely stunned, as the female cultivator crashes onto the grass under the watchful eye of her shocked leader, prompting our boy to instantly hop onto his Green Lotus platform and make a swift getaway, leaving the formidable 9th-stage expert utterly speechless at the kid's insanely fast reaction time. Furious at their leader's sudden death, the remaining disciples charge forward in a desperate, angry pursuit, but Manhua simply glances back with a smirk, ready to unleash another stolen treasure, throwing a massive ancient black net that instantly traps the screaming pursuers in their tracks, which only makes the greedy powerhouse even more determined to hunt him down for his legendary loot. Safe for now, our boy happily inspects the storage bag he snatched from the female cultivator, discovering a special bead that can absorb death chi and finally cure his annoying glowing mist. Manhua realizes that fighting a 9th-stage powerhouse like Lu Daoyun will be incredibly difficult. Suddenly, a pair of hands weave complex seals as a massive spell is unleashed, sending a blinding bolt of lightning crashing straight down toward our flying hero, only for 2 rival cultivators on a floating bamboo pole to block his escape path. Meanwhile, Sunhua from the Winding Stream sect loudly exposes Menghao's legendary treasures to everyone, hoping to claim claim a massive reward by delivering our boy's legendary loot to his sect. Sensing the trap closing in, Manhua wonders if these two rival sects have actually teamed up. But Liu Daoyun demands the others step aside so he can claim his personal revenge. Seizing the moment of distraction, our boy zips past the crowd on his Green Lotus platform, realizing that while his enemies aren't allied, escaping these 8th stage powerhouses will still be brutal. Sweating over his empty pockets, Manhua realizes he needs spirit stones to duplicate his breakthrough pills. Zipping through the dense forest, our boy desperately tries to shake off his persistent pursuers. Meanwhile, the arrogant 9th stage expert demands that his rivals step aside and yield to him. Refusing to back down, the rival duo challenges his authority before he unleashes an icy finger technique. Snorting in unison, the two rivals instantly weave hand signs to counter with their own lightning spell. A massive clash of spiritual energy erupts, sending devastating shockwaves tearing directly through the ancient forest. Riding the shockwaves, Manhua firmly plants his feet on his trusty Green Lotus platform and accelerates through the chaotic crossfire, using their petty squabble to make a clean break. Behind him, a massive explosion of crackling lightning completely obliterates the surrounding trees. Giving chase, the furious expert plans to exploit the weaknesses of Menghao's stolen feather fan. Manhua channels energy into his Green Lotus platform, pushing it to maximum speed, leaving Liu Daoyun utterly flabbergasted by how many legendary treasures this wealthy kid actually possesses, as our boy rockets through the dense forest, leaving a trail of brilliant sparks behind him. Realizing this high-speed chase is draining his reserves, Manhua quickly pops a demon core to recharge, while his smug pursuers copy his move, boasting about their seemingly endless supply of recovery pills. Only for Liu Daoyun to scoff at their pathetic 8th stage cultivation, completely unimpressed by their confidence. Suddenly, a mysterious shadow watches from the tree line as Manhua flies past in a blur, sending a sudden chill down our hero's spine as he senses an incoming threat, and a blinding beam of icy blue energy tears directly through the ancient forest canopy, striking Manhua midair and drawing blood as he struggles to stay on his platform. Crashing hard onto the dirt, Manhua skids backward from the force of that sudden, icy blast, while his stunned pursuers freeze in their tracks as heavy footsteps echo through the quiet clearing, revealing a towering shadow looming directly over our battered hero as he struggles to stand. This newcomer is Ding Xin, a formidable 9th stage expert sent by the powerful Violet Fate sect, who calmly announces that he has arrived with a direct order to end our boy's life. Grimacing in pain, Manhua realizes his luck has run out since he couldn't avoid this sect, while his greedy pursuers break into a cold sweat, realizing this powerhouse complicates their plans. But instead of begging, our boy slams a massive legendary spear directly into the ground, prompting a rival cultivator to instantly recognize the supreme treasure bestowed by Patriarch Reliance, leaving Manhua to smirk and dare anyone with the skills to try and take it. Manhua slams the legendary spear into the ground, daring anyone to come and take it, leaving his greedy pursuers completely stunned as they instantly recognize the legendary divine weapon, while the rival duo quickly decides that securing this priceless treasure is their absolute top priority. Meanwhile, Liu Daoyun hesitates, unable to verify the spear's authenticity without a higher cultivation stage, but the fear of his rivals snatching the prize forces him to prioritize the weapon anyway. Seizing the chaos, the rival sect orders their junior brother to make a mad dash for the spear, only for Manhua to keep his eyes locked on the dangerous red-haired newcomer instead. Ding Xin calmly demands his surrender, promising a safe trial back at the Violet Fate sect, prompting our boy to question if this self-righteous expert even knows the real story, explaining that he was actually blackmailed into selling his useless iron spear in the first place. Ding Xin scolds our boy for not destroying the spear earlier to avoid this entire mess, prompting Manhua to quietly pop another recovery pill to prepare for the worst, while the greedy rival cultivator eagerly lunges forward to claim the legendary weapon for himself, triumphantly hoisting it into the air as if he just won the ultimate cosmic lottery. Furious at the theft, Liu Daoyun immediately unleashes a devastating icy finger technique to retaliate, sending a blinding beam of freezing energy straight toward the unsuspecting thief, who instantly panics as he realizes the incoming attack is far too fast to dodge. Left with no choice, he desperately raises the supposedly divine spear to block the blast, only for the cheap iron weapon to instantly snap in half like a twig, exposing Menghao's hilarious scam to the entire crowd of dumbfounded cultivators. This greedy thief breaks into a cold sweat as the harsh reality of the scam sinks in, while his stunned companions stare in absolute disbelief at the cheap silver metal hiding underneath, leaving the dying cultivator to cough up blood while clutching the useless broken toy, and he collapses dead onto the dirt, a victim of his own foolish greed. Suddenly, a massive chain of explosions tears through the forest as the real battle erupts, forcing the red-haired powerhouse to effortlessly deflect a barrage of flying swords with his bare hands, before he immediately gives chase, keeping pace with Menghao's speeding Green Lotus platform, prompting our sweating hero to wonder if this monster is just toying with him, as he desperately swallows another raw demon core, unleashing a volatile surge of dark energy. Unfortunately, Ding Xin simply sneers, eager to harvest the demonic core from our boy's ruined body. Sweating bullets, Menghao realizes he is completely out of options and running dangerously low on recovery pills. as he looks down at the vast mountain range, wondering if this is truly the end. Suddenly, he bursts through the thick tree line and finds himself staring at a massive, tranquil lake, prompting our boy to wonder if he has somehow returned to the legendary North Sea. But with the ominous black smoke still trailing behind him, there is absolutely nowhere to hide. Cornered over the open water, Manhua desperately prepares to unleash yet another stolen treasure from his stash. Throwing his ancient black net to summon a massive, roaring vortex directly toward his red-haired pursuer, only for Ding Xin to effortlessly deflect the attack while mocking the kid's seemingly worthless arsenal, forcing our desperate hero to unroll his mysterious beast scroll and prepare for one final explosive stand.